Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tech and Devs Conference of the Malta Blockchain Summit 2018, sponsored by DQR. Permissioned versus permissionless blockchains. Uncover the pros and cons of different levels of involvement, access, and interaction with blockchains. Michael Herman, Hyperonomy. Samuel Fisher, Fish and Bits. Charles Hoskinson, IOHK. Marco Streng, Genesis Mining. Daniel Kraft, Namecoin. Moderated by Anthony Day, Deloitte.
Hello everyone, good morning and welcome back to day 2 of the Malta Blockchain Summit. I hope you guys had a great first day. It was very exciting for a lot of us over here from Malta. My name's Wesley Alul. I'm from Quizando.io. A lot of people in the blockchain industry know me as Mr. Malta. I'm promoting this island because I believe Malta has a lot to offer. This morning we're going to be having a lot of fun in the Dev and Tech conference. We're going to be talking about the future, the current, and where everything's going in blockchain. Now, this first panel we got on stage is permission versus permissionless. We have going to be looking at different ways the blockchain is going to be affecting our life, and would these two be working? So I'd like to welcome on stage none other than our moderator for the day, Mr. Anthony Day. Big round of applause, please. And I'll leave it in Anthony's hands to do all the introductions.
Musical chairs, 2 left, music's still playing. We're nearly there. All right.
Daniel.
We've got everybody in. Good morning, Malta. Thank you very much. Fantastic attendance. Thank you guys all for getting up early to join us here. I'm very excited for this panel. We've got a fantastic group of individuals. Very lucky to have some very experienced people, some very big names in the blockchain space, people who've worked in technology for a long time in a number of different contexts, in a number of different industries, in a number of different ways. And we're here to talk about permissioned versus permissionless. A topic that has polarized opinion very often. Blockchain as a technology has created strong opinions, has got people talking about the technology, I think more than any that we've seen so far. Maybe AI just on the edge of that, but in terms of being able to say, no, it's this, no, it's that. People making strong definitional statements around what blockchain should be. And we're going to try and break that down a little bit today, trying to present some objective views from either side, from different perspectives, because in reality, I don't think it's versus. I don't think it's one or the other. I think you can create value with any flavor variation of any technology. It's around looking for that opportunity. It's around getting the right people around you and doing something in the real world that can make a difference. So we're going to unpick that a little bit today. Very excited to be here with Michael, Samuel, Marco, Charles, and Daniel, each giving a very different perspective. We're going to start with Samuel. Help us frame the discussion a little bit. We've got people here who've worked in government sector. You've had experience working with ICOs as a technical advisor. You've worked for large automotives. You've worked in insurance. You've seen public, private sector, permissioned and permissionless. Talk to me about the different perspectives, the different questions people have asked, and the challenges you've seen on both sides.
Yeah, so when we start, I see that from my background in enterprise software development, that there's a lot of companies that specifically say, listen, we have privacy requirements, we have an audit process, and we have responsibility that we have to deal with. We cannot just simply put all the information on the blockchain, especially when we look at, for example, GDPR, which further complicates it. Now, this is the one side, and this is the side that says, can we change the blockchain to fit our processes? Now, when we look at the other side, we have the idealistic side. And the idealistic side says, blockchain allows whole new processes. And then the main question is, do we want to adapt the blockchain to the business processes that already exist? Or might we want to look at different business processes based on the technology that's now available?
That's a really good point, and trying to force fit technology into a way of working that has evolved over 20, 30, 40 years, with regulation, with legacy technology, with ill-conceived ideas or well-conceived ideas that were well-meaning, but 20 years later just don't seem to cut it anymore. Are you for trying to apply the technology to old processes, or do you want to see transformation for real?
I want to see both happen. When you look at the way that the internet disrupted the way that traditional businesses worked, you saw that certain traditional companies adapted to the internet, but you also saw whole new companies come up that brought very different processes to the world. And I think that both added a lot of value in this stage.
Good. That's a perfect transition into Michael. I promise that wasn't planned. Michael, you've got more gray hairs than any of us here, and I would say, relatively speaking, you're the veteran of the panel. Have we seen this all before, in terms of the hype cycles, the different perspectives, the overinflated expectations, the inappropriate applications of a technology in a space it doesn't belong? Tell us about what you've seen in your journey in IT.
Well, let me try to put a little more positive spin on that. Yeah, I've been in IT or software development for 45 years, and I've been fortunate to be at the early stage of many different technologies. And when we first encountered this topic of permission versus permissionless, I said, well, what have we seen before? If you look at the early operating systems, they all started permissionless. And we know now that operating systems, Windows, Unix, Linux, et cetera, they're all highly permissioned to support business applications. You look at the early versions of the World Wide Web that started in 1990, 1991. They were permissionless. You could create a web server, you could link to anybody's web pages, but it was once you started to look at the more advanced workloads, started to look at online commerce, online banking, online healthcare. Those are workloads that naturally require people to identify themselves, both you as a recipient of those services and as people that are providing those services. So back when I was a graduate student at the University of Waterloo, we had a chance to read a very interesting paper, and it was by Ivan Sutherland. It was called The Technology Wheel of Reincarnation. It was written in 1968. And Ivan Sutherland was responsible for a lot of the early work with graphics processors. And he talked about the evolution of graphics processors. It's an interesting paper to read because you see it being replayed over and over. So I guess my challenge or my goal in terms of the blockchain technology, because I see it primarily as a very interesting database technology. I see the whole crypto thing as kind of being an interesting distraction, actually, that's taken us way off on a useful and important tangent. But if you think of how would you capture and enact all the business activity on the planet, so 8 million people, 8 billion people, 60 million companies, 60,000 schools of higher education, 60,000 skills supported by those schools to support the jobs for those companies. When you start to capture that, and I think ultimately that's what we need to be thinking about, then that gives you a different perspective of blockchain as a software technology that has been fueled and given life by the crypto side.
I think we've had our first shot fired today, guys. We were going to try and keep it civilized, but I think there might have been a shot fired in there. Daniel, I'm going to ask you to come back on that one if that's okay. As I said, this is not I don't think this is an either or which is better, but in your view, looking at permissionless blockchains, most of your career has been to date based around coins and cryptocurrency. Do you have a counter to that in terms of the value that digital currency, cryptocurrency has provided, whether there's a space for blockchain as a data-based technology and also blockchain as a currency technology?
Yes. So let me first of all respond to the points you've raised. So I would say that even a permissionless blockchain, the term permissionless here is on a very different level than when you say an operating system without permissions. Because even on a permissionless blockchain, you still have private keys and digital signatures that identify the users and give them access to their funds and not someone else. So the permissionless aspect here is not about permission to just move around money as you wish, but more about permission to actually participate in the blockchain and participate in the exchange. So let me now get back to like your original question. So I would say that blockchain as just the data structure might be like an interesting thing to apply because it has all those like guarantees because of how it is built, that the data is kind of immutable or that you notice any modifications. But that is something that has been around for a long time. So the really interesting aspect of what made blockchain big was kind of when Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin 10 years ago, was that he didn't invent the blockchain as a data structure in that sense, but he solved the double spending problem. And he told us how you could build a completely decentralized and trustless system that just works and where the nodes reach consensus and that is secure. So that is the revolutionary part about it, I would say. So blockchain in a permission setting as a database might make things more efficient in some ways and might improve upon existing processes, but it's certainly not the revolutionary part. And the really revolutionary part and the part that really enables new things that couldn't be done before, that is in permissionless blockchains that are completely decentralized, completely open.
All right. Thank you very much for that. And I think what we're already starting to see is a real discussion and elaboration around where value is created. And I think we can argue in any direction. The degree of revolutionariness, if I can use that phrase, I think we'll come back to that because I think that's really interesting as to where do we see full potential around permission and permissionless over time. Charles, I'm going to flip to you if that's okay, because you threw a bit of a spanner in the works earlier this morning when we started saying permissioned versus permissionless. You say, well, actually, why can't you have both? Obviously, you had experience as a co-founder of Ethereum, Cardano, now IOHK. Tell me a little bit about hybrid blockchains, or if that's the term you would use.
So when you take a look at permission or permissionless, all you're really talking about is who's in control. And there's this illusion of control that we like to have in the cryptocurrency space at the moment. It's like, I at the moment can have no influence over Bitcoin in terms of its consensus algorithm. I'd have to start a multi-billion-dollar mining operation to do that, to have a meaningful hash percentage. So I really don't have any control over the system anymore. And if you look at EOS, it's 21 nodes. It's like you could buy some tokens, but it's going to be very difficult without massive capital investments to have control. So in essence, I say, look, at the end of the day, you're always going to have some notion of someone running it. It's just a question of who's doing it, what incentives do they have, why are they doing it, these types of things that matter. And if you're clever about those trust pairings, you're clever about how these things are wired together, then you can end up building a system that tends to operate with original intent. You have that immutability, that auditability, that time stamping, and even if it's politically inconvenient, the system will do what you want it to do. Now, in terms of fusing both of these things together, I see permission ledgers as potentially the great onboarder to people throughout the world into the cryptocurrency spectrum, or at least into the decentralized service spectrum. So, for example, we operate in Africa. We have office in Addis Ababa, and one of our goals is to bring 1.5 million coffee farmers into the permission ledger space, get them into a supply chain management system. Now, what happens when we do that? It means we've created digital identities for every single one of those 1.5 million farmers. And it means we now have a way of interfacing with them, and we can connect them through a side chain to Bitcoin or to Ethereum or to Cardano. And then they can use that for financial services. And so these are the types of fusions that we look for. First, can you create the right trust pairing so that the system behaves with original intent and it operates at the lowest possible cost? Two, once you've created such a system, how do you wire those systems together, the internet of blockchains? And once you have that, then you actually have a beautiful ecosystem that millions of people can use with certainty that they're all going to play by the same rules, even if they're inconvenient to a particular person.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. I might pick up on a couple of things. Firstly, I'm really curious, what are the exciting and challenging parts of trying to take blockchain to Ethiopia? A lot of us here are working in European settings, North American settings. Trying to explain blockchain to an Ethiopian farmer may actually be the same challenge as trying to explain it to an audience in Malta. But tell us a little bit more about your experience.
Well, you don't explain it to them. You start with real-life problems they want to solve. For example, you say, would you like to get a better price for the beans you sell? At the moment, they have to send text messages around and try to find the right washing station to sell at, to say you can get better price discovery. That's a real-life problem. Don't even mention the blockchain. Second, how do you get investments to upgrade the farms? There's all kinds of things you can do, like stumping. It's where you cut down the tree, an old tree, and let it regrow. When it regrows, you get 2 to 3 times as many beans. Basic thing. But where does the capital come from to enable these types of things? Or insurance for the farms. So what you're doing is you say, we can give you access to credit, we can give you insurance and better price discovery. Then from the government side, they can get better traceability, they can get more fair trade, they can get better sustainability. 90% of Ethiopia's biodiversity has been destroyed over the last century. This is a country where the lion is the national symbol, and they only have a few thousand left in the wild because of agricultural practices and rapid population growth. So you go to the government and say, adopting this system, you can get much better outcomes. And then you go to foreign investors and say, you can get better trackability and certainty that, that the farms are behaving according to the schemes that you've set up. So those are the conversations you have. Blockchain is just a tool to enable that, and you don't even talk about that. It's just like saying, I want to communicate with my friends, use VoIP. Do we really talk about VoIP? No, we talk about Messenger or Skype or the things that live above it. So the interfaces and experiences matter far more.
Good. Thank you for sharing that. And to all those in the audience, if you want to talk about blockchain, don't talk about blockchain. That's a pro tip.
It's the fight club of societies.
Very good. Marco, I'm going to flip to you. Obviously, you're here representing one of the largest mining companies in the cryptocurrency space. And obviously, having spoken to you before, the obvious question would be, tell us about your experience with permissionless blockchains. But actually, you told me that you are getting interest to have your organization support from an infrastructure perspective, permissioned blockchains. Tell us more about that.
Well, I mean, we were all, from the beginning on, driven by the ideals of blockchain, and I think it was a very good summary from your side, Dan, that when you come from an idealistic perspective, the permissionless are the ones that you are very fascinated about, and that's, of course, what we are primarily focusing when we are building our blockchain infrastructure or mining infrastructure, is to build basically the decentralized backbone of the blockchain world. And I think, this is really the most fascinating point, that blockchain can create more equality and more openness and transparency in the world. And especially, I really like also when you're talking about Africa, is that you have such a big gap between the privileged world and the unprivileged world, and there's no motive or incentive from the privileged world to close that gap, because there's no real money or economically incentive in the unprivileged world. But blockchain goes out of the dimension, out of the usual financial world, and is there and is open for everyone, and can really drive a lot of benefit on a global level. So that's what we are really fascinated about, but of course now they're forming a lot of applications on a permissioned side. There's a lot of governments that are very interested in it. I personally think that, of course, you have to be careful. The more you permission it, the more it goes away from the ideal of real blockchain and the idea of Satoshi. And but of course, this is exciting, and this space will also evolve. And I think for me, it's important. It's always to leave the innovation go. So no restriction. Don't force anything in the space. I think it was also when we started, we were really bullish on the whole cryptocurrency altcoin space, where everyone was highly criticizing altcoins, saying, oh, it's a distraction to Bitcoin. And now we have seen a lot of, actually, a lot of new coins come up. A lot of are questionable, that's naturally, but a lot of them have real innovative values. And in that regard, our goal is to build up more blockchain infrastructure, make it more decentral, which is another interesting dialogue to have, because there is an innate driver for centralization, unfortunately, because large-scale mining operations have a economy of scale and have an advantage over home mining systems. But Genesis Mining is also offering the possibility for everyone to start or to mine in a highly advanced and most efficient setup in the cloud. And in that way, we are decentralizing hash power again. Of course, you could say physically they are still centralized, but this is a challenge this is a topic that we have prioritized a lot to make that cloud mining in a way more trustless and give the control of the machines to the users in the end that are remotely connected to the machines. In all, I think this is a very fascinating space, and I'm very, very curious of what I was blown away to see also on a high level government, global political level, what kind of inquiries we got. I could never have thought that I'm around with so much high politicians at one point and talk to these kind of to these people on such a high level. But I'm waking up every morning and I'm fascinated of what is about to come, and this space is really the place to be right now in tech.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for a small glimpse into Marco's world and into mining and the interest in mining. Cloud-based, decentralized. We've heard even in the same conversation, the original vision of Satoshi. As soon as you hear someone say the original vision of Satoshi, you know that they might just be leaning towards decentralize everything. But in the same time, you said anything can create value. So, a balanced perspective, or maybe a hybrid personality, or both sides of the businessman and the decentralized there coming through. I want to say thank you very much, guys, for giving us a short, brief introduction into your worlds. For those in the audience, guys are going to be here for hopefully the rest of the day. I'm sure you've got a whole bunch of questions. We're not going to have a lot of time to do that on stage right now. But clearly there is a huge wealth of experience, great brain power, some philosophy there, some years and years of experience of doing things the hard way, but that has got the industry and blockchain permissioned and permissionless to where it is today. So I want to thank my panel, and guys, please could you give them a big round of applause. All right, guys, thank you very much for listening. We're going to step off stage now and hand over to whoever's next.
Arrivederci.
The use of smart contracts in DApps development. What lies ahead for the development of smart contracts within decentralized applications? Johan Zammit, Smart Studios. Aaron Anderson, Web2 Devs. Chris Craven, Blockchip. Moderated by Adel El-Masiri, Odem.
Well, good morning, everybody. I hope you had a little bit of rest last night. It's very exciting to be here, and my name is Adel El-Masiri. I am the Chief Technology Mentor of Odem, and I have a PhD in Machine Learning, Artificial Intelligence, and published papers in blockchain. It's fascinating to understand how it works, and the quintessential piece of blockchain is, of course, the smart contracts. So the first thing that we come to understand and dismantle about smart contracts is how they work. And before we get into that, I'd like to introduce my panelists. So if you can introduce yourself.
I'm Aaron Anderson. I'm a co-founder of Web3 Devs. We create distributed applications for a variety of clients. We take client work and customize a solution for their use case.
Hi there, I'm Chris Craven. I'm here with Blockchip, and we're developing a blockchain platform with a new consensus protocol that has 0 transaction fees. And one of the ways we're managing to achieve that is by replacing the role of miners with businesses and dApps.
Hi, good morning. I'm Johan Zammit. I'm the founder and CEO of Smart Studios. We help organizations with their business ventures in designing, implementing, and taking the business ventures to market.
I'm Lee Smith. I'm the Chief DApp Architect of Odom with Adele. Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, so the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about smart contracts, the definition. Are they legal contracts? Are they smart?
In my opinion, smart contracts are really more like agents as opposed to a contract. You give them some instructions to handle some operations on your behalf. Where I'm from in Tennessee, the legislature actually recognizes smart contracts as legally binding. But if a smart contract's doing what it should be doing, it should be self-executing and not actually have to go to arbitration.
In the way I look at it, a smart contract, it's basically just the ability to write code that executes itself. And so the contract is only as smart as the code that makes it up. In terms of it being legally binding or a contract, contracts really are just promises. You write down that you'll promise you can do something, and then if you don't do it, a man with a stick comes and makes you do it. With smart contracts, the really exciting thing is you don't need that arbitration because they're self-enforcing. They execute themselves. So that's my take on it.
I think it's a very good question, Adele, first of all. If you take smart contracts as just a piece of code running on a blockchain, the answer would be no, they're not legally binding. However, as Aaron said, there are countries in the world, including a set of states in the US, California, Tennessee, Arizona, Delaware, and also, for example, the laws that passed in Malta yesterday, they acknowledged what a smart contract is. So that's the initial answer. It's a very hot topic. Earlier this year, there was a survey. They asked actually lawyers what they thought, and 40% said yes, they are. 20 said no, and 40 said we don't know. So,
Yeah. So to that question, are they? I think that's definitely up to the lawyers. Could they be? I think the answer is sure. That's the entire point here, right? Is to Chris's point, we can execute programs that we've built, and we can do so in a distributed and verifiable way. And that will give you the foundation to actually create a contract and execute it.
And as you mentioned, there is countries that actually are working on a legal framework so that they would make it into the law, Malta included, actually, in trying to get those out, as well as there are works out there for a framework that would create a legal layer on top of the smart contracts so that you can do it in a way that would withstand it being put in court. With that said, then the biggest question next is, are all contracts the same? Are they created equally? Do we think there are different types of contracts?
So in my opinion, I see two categories for smart contracts. You have your library contracts that Open Zeppelin has done a real good job of making some standard smart contracts that are tested, that are resources for everybody. And then you have your custom contracts whenever you reach out to folks like us to build you a solution out. We're going to be using these library contracts to build custom contracts. And you have some functional contracts that provide a way to handle data, but the majority of what you want from a contract is the agency aspect. It's going to manage who has permissions to do what they need to do, keep tallies of people's ERC20 tokens, and just act on the behalf of the application itself.
I think dividing like that is an excellent way of putting it, kind of giving it that taxonomy. I would subdivide it even further, because you could ask a similar question of how many types of programs are there? How many types of computer programs are there? And as they're Turing-complete, there's essentially an infinite variety. So I think the way I like to look at it is, what are the use cases of the smart contracts? Like in the previous thing, don't talk about blockchain, talk about what they can do. And in terms of the use cases of smart contracts, pretty much anything where you want a program that's going to execute itself, or you want to make an agreement, I think there's a use and a type of smart contract to be had.
Yeah, I think you can, following what Chris said, you can take it either by the use cases of smart contracts or else by the blockchain that they run on. So there are differences between the smart contracts that run on Ethereum, those that run on EOS. We also have, although to a lesser extent, smart contracts that run on the Bitcoin blockchain. So there is a technical difference, but then there are the million and one ways of using smart contracts in different industries. We're using them for voting, we're using them for any kind of registries and insurance. So there are these two differences.
To Johan's point, I think the way that at least I look at it is very much in terms of what the blockchain technology is offering in terms of capabilities and Turing completeness, essentially. So I think that's probably like if, for instance, if you zoom in on Ethereum. Within the ecosystem there, all of those things are basically the same, right? They're all running on the same virtual machine. They're executing the same instructions. Yeah, I think that in that sense, it's much easier to look at it in terms of capability of the system, because that will describe what contracts you can actually build on that chain, right? Like Ethereum being Turing-complete, EOS as well. You can write basically any program that exists if you're willing to pay to execute it. That doesn't necessarily exist on other chains, like for instance Bitcoin, where you can't. It's not Turing-complete. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a really solid way of looking at the differences in the capabilities.
It's an all interesting point here that the smart contracts actually came out from necessity to be able of actually using the blockchain for something practical. So that was the inspiration for Ethereum to actually come into existence, because it was so difficult for to use the blockchain that underpins Bitcoin to actually create something meaningful. And hence that leads us to the question, how are we using it? I mean, we talked about the fundamentals of it, but maybe each one of you can give us a little bit of light on how you're actually using it in your project.
So because I do client work and all my projects are different, the use case in each application is different. Whenever I do hackathons, sometimes I'll build a smart contract out to handle the agency. A client may require a DApp to be built with no use of smart contracts at all, but still doing the functionality or using some of those lessons learned in architecture that we use in Ethereum. Whenever I'm building out a, say like a WordPress plugin for a client who needs to allow their customer base to interact with their ERC20 token, I'll write out the smart contract, audit it, test it, deploy it to a test net, and then build out a front end to just speak to that API, and it will grab the Web3 and the address from the client so it can identify them. So a client can interact with the application without doing login and still managing their records using the database. So it really does allow for plug-and-play modularity for these things, especially within WordPress, for example, with the plugin architecture.
So for us, there's kind of two halves to what we're doing with smart contracts. For the blockchain platform itself, as I said, we're replacing the role of miners with businesses and dApps. So we're working with businesses and developers because they're having a huge variety of smart contracts for their own different businesses and dApps that'll be on it. For Blockchip itself, the way they're being used is to mediate the games that are running on Blockchip and with the game developers. So people will interact with the smart contracts to play those games, and then the revenue from the games will then be shared with the correct people via the smart contracts. So it's quite simple really in that regard, but a wide variety on the platform itself.
For us, one of the main aspects that earlier this year, we tried to tackle is actually the legal part, the understanding whether smart contracts are legal. So we worked on a product by which two organizations or two persons can go into an agreement without knowing any single line of solidity or of smart contract coding. And the product produces both a document where there are their signatures and also a smart contract with their digital signatures. So it's still a very evolving environment, but very, very, very interesting. One point I would like to add is that whether they are legal or not is the digital identity. It's all about whether you can identify the person who is actually leading. And the laws, depending on how the laws of e-commerce with digital signatures are, can define whether a smart contract is legal or not. Having said that, on the client side, we receive a variety of requests. The most common are the supply chain, the seed to sale, for example, the provenance where products are coming from, and every step of the way the transaction is logged on the blockchain. There is also any kind of registry, so land registry, a registry of iOS devices. There is insurance. There's also health records and where the patients can give their consent to the user of their data. There is also music royalties, for example, where you have a smart contract. All the ecosystem is on the smart contract, and there is who produced the music and all the other entities, including the DJ that is playing, and all the others are paid automatically.
So for Odom, the contracts that we currently have on the mainnet are basically registries, since our goal is to facilitate education. We have registries of events and registries of outcomes of those events. So we basically have just multiple registries of things occurring, and we rely on the fact that those things will be immutable for hopefully ever. That's how we use them.
So, that's great and fascinating, and the academic in me cannot resist but look to the future. So we have seen a lot of experiences with the issues that happened and different hacking and a lot of issues that would go with how tokens would be burned and you cannot get access to them and parity hack and all of that. So in the next, just 2 minutes, maybe a quick look into where we are going with all the smart contracts.
So I think the next logical step for smart contracts is to do what Wix and Squarespace has done with website development. We want to be able to allow everyone in the world to create a smart contract to handle whatever task needs to be done using a simple drag and drop methodology. How soon are we going to get there? I think there's some projects that are putting that within a 2-year scope. But again, that may be something that's 10 years out. But I think when that happens, the way people communicate and do business worldwide and for generations will fundamentally change.
I think what Aaron said about that drag and drop aspect that we're going to be going towards is absolutely right. And I think the biggest impact that smart contracts are going to have over the next 10 years is going to be in the legal space. I think, so let's say if I buy a house from someone, I have to pay lawyers to go over sets of paperwork, check it's all, Then, if I want to sell a house 2 months later, more lawyers have got to go through it all over again, potentially even the same lawyers going over the same paperwork. It's madness. And I think smart contracts that are self-executing are ultimately going to take a real chunk out of the legal profession, especially when there could be online libraries to put together your own legal contracts in a drag-and-drop manner. And I think there's going to be a real move towards making legal contracts more accessible and more smarter.
where we're going in the long term, in 2030, 2040, 2050, is total automation. However, society out there is not ready for total automation, but smart contracts have characteristics which can enable this total automation. So a smart contract, you cannot pull the plug on a smart contract, you cannot change it, you cannot debate about what is in the code, and it runs and it auto enables the functionality within it. So those are key characteristics that, together with the blockchain, are unique. So 10 years ago, Satoshi gave us the trust in storage. Like smart contracts gave us the trust in the automation, in the computability. And with these two items, we can achieve total automation, but this will take 20, 30 years.
So yeah, I understood that. I would answer this from a bit more of a technical level. I suspect in the future, obviously, there's a very clear need for different consensus algorithms so that we can speed things up. The confirmation rates are basically too slow to do any high transaction volumes, and there are solutions today that are trying to solve this, but they're not built into the chains, right? And I suspect that we'll see more and more of things like EOS and Eternity and these alternative solutions that are fundamentally trying to speed things up with different takes on the consensus algorithms. I suspect we'll also need to see some better storage solutions as well. At the moment, storing data on the blockchain is relatively difficult, and it requires you to jump through a bunch of crypto hoops to actually link off-chain storage solutions to the on-chain ones. And fundamentally, we need to fix this because this is just, it's too messy to deal with, basically. So, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for a lovely discussion here. Kindly please help me upload them. Thank you. Thank you.
The blockchain of things. Joshua Elul, University of Malta. Peter Bush, from Bosch.
Good morning, everyone. So we're going to talk about the blockchain of things, which is essentially the integration of the Internet of Things with blockchain. So what is the Internet of Things? A lot of people have been talking about blockchain. Let's give just a brief overview of what the Internet of Things is. It's all about enhancing our day-to-day lives, creating a more efficient process for the everyday user by integrating computational devices into products and services without these users even knowing that these computational devices are there. And where are they used? They're used in all sorts of different places, from smart homes to event monitoring, to environmental monitoring, to smart healthcare, to games. So we're really now starting to see these devices integrating into many different application domains in the real world. And we all know what blockchain and smart contracts are. Blockchain and smart contracts allow for verifiability of enforceable digital processes, and obviously in a decentralized manner. Now, if we have these digital processes that are enforceable, automatable, and they're tamper-proof, wouldn't it be great if we could integrate the real-world processes using the Internet of Things to achieve decentralized, tamper-proof, verifiable, real-world processes? And if we look at the typical hardware that's used in the Internet of Things, we're talking about certain devices that are more computationally powerful, which can actually interact with the blockchain, but we're also talking about resource-constrained devices that cannot interact with the blockchain. So how can we actually go about integrating these resource-constrained devices with the blockchain? We're talking about two different worlds. We're talking about resource-constrained systems trying to interact with a resource-hungry system. We're talking about a system that has ad hoc connectivity, which is trying to speak to a paradigm that is enforcing always-on connectivity. So there's this disconnect between the blockchain and the Internet of Things. And there are three main challenges that we need to overcome to achieve this reality, including lightweight protocols, which a number of people out there are proposing, including how we can define the Internet of Things paradigm, the execution that it will actually do based upon the smart contracts that they are agreeing to. And also, once we're executing code based upon the smart contracts, how can we implement proof of service that they actually implement what they're agreeing to in the smart contracts? And once we achieve these goals, we can start to realize true integration of the blockchain of things. And this is exactly where we want to be. And Peter Bush will talk about a particular use case on mobility in the blockchain of things.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter.
Okay. Just for all of you who really do not know what Bosch is, we are a small company in the IoT space. And if you look at the numbers here, that could be quite impressive. And just what I want to mention here is that we are not only doing automotive stuff, we're doing a lot of stuff in the industrial technology, energy and building, and consumer good and security stuff. So what does that mean? We are really, really in the field of Internet of Things in the future. So this is our big vision. So, and when it comes to the Internet of Things, we talk about billions of connected devices. And these devices generate data. And this data really enables new products, new business models. But on the other side, you have smart contracts and the distributed ledger technology, which are coming up. And so from that point of view, we have a completely new world. When you talk about the Internet, which we have to do with data, we talk now of the Internet of values. So what does that happen? What does it mean for our Internet of Things vision from Bosch? We call that an economy of things. So devices will not only communicate, they will make business with each other. So this is very, very interesting. They have to communicate with other to certain protocols. However, we need to understand what the distributed ledger technology holds for us here in that case. And there's another one very interesting thing, since Bosch works together with the biggest automakers in the world. And they're telling us how do we do our autonomous driving ideas on the road. So we have here autonomous cars, which are legal entities in the future, because they decide for themselves. So this very, very interesting thing, maybe AI related as well, but however, they need to exchange values, not only data. Yeah? So let me talk a little bit about our use case that we have here. One very, very interesting thing is where we start learning with distributed ledger technology was the Automotive fraud use case. This is coming to the market, so we're talking about real products here, not only proof of concepts. We take all the mileage from the odometers, verify them, is this the real mileage from the cars, because we have the complete system expertise from the car, so we do exactly know, is this a real number coming right now at this date at that location from the odometer, put it somewhere in the blockchain, and then later on when we want to sell that car again, the buyer can really be sure this car has really that mileage. Because what we found out, we have like 6 to 8 billion euros of fraud loss in every year, only in Germany. So because of cars which see nicely and have 20,000 kilometers on it, but in reality they have like 150,000. Yeah? So lots of stuff is happening. You wouldn't imagine how much there's happening there. The next very, very important thing here, when we talk about the car of the future, I'm only talking mostly about mobility because I'm the product owner here for mobility. Safe software updates. When you talk about software in the car, we have these days more than like 200,000 lines of code. In the future, we will have millions of lines of code in the cars. Lots of new, very interesting technology in the car, doing AI, doing autonomous driving, doing all that other very interesting stuff which come up in the future. And we really do not exactly know how this will work out, because they are all talking to each other, they are talking to the roads, they are talking to smart cities, they have access to smart grids, and so on and so on. And so we need updates. And as you can imagine, when you sit at your PC and you get all the time updates, and you can't work, do you want to have that in the car? Yeah? So that's what we have to talk about. And here we talk about new models in distributed ledger which can help us here. Because the first step will be documenting exactly what software, to what time, to what component in the car will come in your car. And does it really make sense? Is it safe? That's the most priority, highest priority for us. Is it really safe? And document that. And this is the first point that the government and the regulatories will really allow to do this on the road, if we are really documented what is happening. The next thing here is really what we're after is the fair data markets of the future. And this is really the hidden agenda that we as Bosch have. Yeah? Because we're talking here about data usage. Who owns the data? Is it Google, Amazon, Facebook who owns the data? No. Yeah? In the future, what really is very important for us, we see a new bright future that every entity who is generating data is owning that data. Yeah? So that really, the car, the person, the house, the heating system can sell its data to the environment, has its own e-wallet, for example, is immutable, and maybe no one can interfere with that. And really, we want a little bit have an alternative approach to these GAFA monopolistic platforms out there. They won't disappear, of course. We need them, that's for sure. However, there are several use cases where you as an individual do not want to have your data used as it is used today. And when we come to these very, very interesting new models of the future, and the new technologies which are out there, then really we need to come up with new ideas. A decentralized market would be really a very good first step in that case. I think we're quite soon with the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Welcome back. It is the Malta Blockchain Summit. We're here day 2. Morning's going really, really well. And we got some exciting things lined up for you now. Yep. First on stage, we're going to be having none other than one of the founding fathers of the blockchain, W. Scott Stornetta. He's going to be talking to us this morning about the blockchain long view. Later on, we're going to be having the Honorable Minister Silvio Schembri from the Office of the Prime Minister, responsible for the financial services, digital economy, and innovation. Guys, this is going to be a great morning. Keep with us. We got a lot going on. Let's get ready for the continuation of the Malta Blockchain Summit.
Have we got it?
Blockchain, the long view. Industry expert Professor Scott Stornetta, having written one of the very first academic papers on the subject, offers us an invaluable insight into the science of cryptography and distributed computing. Scott Stornetta, Eugen Partners.
I'm better looking in that picture than. It's a little intimidating to hear the introduction because I don't want to lay claim to having invented something that I didn't invent. But I would like to tell something that I think is not well understood about the early history of the work that we did in trying to create an immutable record. I know some of you are going to immediately say, gee, this is work that you did in 1991. If you apply a standard depreciation schedule to that, that means the value of your work is about 0. But there's also another possibility, and that is that by taking a long view, a historical perspective on things, maybe you gain additional predictive power. And you'll have to decide which of those two scenarios is the case at the end of my talk. I want to start with the Siege of Malta, something that Steve Tendon referred to a couple of nights ago. Because there's an interesting thing that ties into what I think of as the blockchain. Again, this was about 450 years ago, and the siege was underway, and as a result, the silver and gold bullion ships were not able to come into the ports. And so they had to resort to making a new kind of coin without reliance on silver or gold. And so this is the coin that was made. This is dated the following year, but it contains a very interesting inscription. Okay? It says, non ias sed fides. And for those of you that were not Latin undergraduate majors, it's not the metal, but the trust. And in a sense, that really goes to the heart of what Stuart Haber and I were trying to do when we first started work on an immutable record. Again, I first heard about the Bitcoin paper because I had several people send me unsolicited mail saying, gee, 4 of the 8 footnotes in Satoshi's paper are to your work, and I happen to know that you were a missionary in Japan and speak Japanese, and so just wondering, would you like to tell us whether or not you're Satoshi? And my response has always been unequivocal, and I'd like to state it for the record here. Watashi wa Satoshi Nakamoto de wa arimasen. I don't know any other way to say it more clearly. But I've been very influenced by the Japanese culture, and in fact, our aspirational goal at Yugen Partners, a venture capital fund in the blockchain space that I serve as chief scientist at. Can we get back to the slide? Oh, sorry. I knew that. We've chosen this classical name, Yugen, which suggests having deep insight. And so I've phrased my talk in the form of a modified haiku. An ancient problem finds a digital answer. Opportunity? Yes, but how to move wisely. Let's talk about that ancient problem real quickly. This is pretty ancient. This is a meeting depicted between 2 tribes who had to settle a boundary dispute. And the way they settled it was they brought all the leading members of both tribes together, witnessed the event, and set down a set of stones, wouldn't want to call them blocks, in a pile to mark the boundary. But it shows the essential elements that ancient contracts had to include: witnesses and a record. And one of my favorite, there are many examples of records that have been created over the years to witness contracts. One of my favorite is the indenture. And I think most people are familiar with the phrase indentured servant, but I wonder if you understand what the true meaning of a denture is. The etymology is from dentures, teeth. And the reason that they chose that word is that this is a contract in triplicate, and then it was torn along these lines here, so that if there was a dispute, the various versions of the document could be brought back together, and the tear, its randomness, guaranteed that only a valid version of the contract could provide the proof. And so for me, this whole journey started in the spring of 1989, when I started to ask myself, how will we create a digital tear? How will we create a tear for only the bits themselves? How will we create an immutable record? And this is obviously a somewhat earlier version of myself and Dr. Haber, back at part of the old Bell Labs in 1990, when we first published our early work. Again, I don't want to lay claim to calling it blockchain, but maybe let's call it the proto-blockchain. And it really came down to the solution for us came one day standing in line at a restaurant waiting for a table, where we had been trying to construct a proof that it was not possible to create immutable records without some sort of trusted third party. And in constructing the proof, we actually realized that the problem could be solved, namely, by essentially creating a conspiracy that involved the entire world. One could invert the problem, leading to the solution that we had proposed, which gave us an immutable record with the world as witnesses. We didn't call it a blockchain, but it certainly involved a chain of blocks that were widely distributed. To give you a feel for what it's really like, though, to how the early blockchain, or early whatever you want to call it, operated, we're going to build a blockchain right now. Let's see. So I'm going to go to gazillion.org. And on the 10th anniversary of the Satoshi paper, we purchased a basket of $1,000 worth of cryptocurrencies. And this will form the genesis block of this Malta-specific blockchain. Okay? And I now invite you to go to gazillion.org and make your own entry into the blockchain. What you'll need to do is predict the price of those 3 cryptocurrencies for a year from the Satoshi Papers publication date, namely October 31 of 2019, and we will transfer the basket of cryptocurrencies that we bought 2 days ago to you if you have the closest prediction. So you should be able to go there now. It's gazillion.org. I see 2 people are already in. Go ahead. Are people having trouble getting there? Are people there? You're just taking time to think about your prediction price. Okay, there are 5 entries in, 6. What's going to happen is not only are you going to become people that have added to the blockchain, you're actually going to receive a copy of the blockchain in just a few seconds, and then you'll be a decentralized community that will have the power to validate who the winner will be. Okay, just going to let a few more requests come in. And then we'll go ahead and start to build this. Again, even after I've built this, it will continue to build. It's just going to be represented visually. I'll give you another 15 seconds. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start building this. Oh, there's quite a few. Oh, wow, okay. Well, just keep on building. Again, you can, you'll be part of this even after I choose build and distribute. Okay, we've built the first set of nodes on this, first set of blocks on this blockchain, and it continues to extend. I hope you see your name down there in the bottom. Again, everyone that continues to contribute, it's continuing to build, but I'm just going to focus for now on a couple of situations. First of all, if I go back to my original submission, it's been replaced by a form, and I'm not going to be able to give you the entirety of today's talk in the remaining 4 minutes and 47 seconds, and so here's an option for receiving the whole talk. Also, a number of people have approached me about having a chance to speak with me privately between now and the end of the conference. If you wanted to do that, you can just check the box, say who you are, and we're going to try to meet with as many of you as we can. But what you should have received at this point, now that we've built and distributed the blockchain, is that you should have received your own receipt and your own copy of the blockchain. And if we wanted to validate a particular entry, this is, of course, my particular receipt. If we want to validate it, we send it out in a randomized way to members of the blockchain community, if you will. And we've got 3 people selected entirely at random that are going to validate the entry and earn a token as a result. One is Devoted Wife. Gee, how did she get in there? I wonder if it's really random. But the others are Elliot and Yetta. If you would both refresh your screens, you'll see that you have the opportunity to validate this blockchain, this particular receipt entry. And so, for example, is Elliot here, or is Yetta here? Okay, Yetta, we're going to just take a look at what your screen looks like. Okay, this is what Yetta's screen looks like. She has her own copy, not beholden to any central authority of the blockchain. She has the putative receipt from me, and she we'd like her to perform the validation on that blockchain. If you'll just scroll down to the bottom and click on that button. Do you see that? You have to refresh your screen. Okay. Well, we're waiting for Yetta. Let's see how some others are doing. Devoted Wife has already validated, as has Elliot. Elliot, where are you? Got to be here somewhere. And we're still waiting on Yetta. Did you perform the validation? You don't want the token? Is that Well, we've already got a majority consensus. Why don't we call it at that? Now, watch what happens if I try to change my entry. You know, I wasn't actually predicting the price would be $64.50. I was predicting that it would be 16,000. Yeah. Let's just change that. Okay. That's what I really submitted, right? So I'm going to request validation of that. And off we go. And now we should see, in the remaining minute and 36 seconds, we should see that a new 3 people have been chosen, totally at random again. Gee, devoted wife showed up again. That's Michelle and Reality Clash. And hopefully you are trying to validate that record. What's that looking like? Let's see what Reality Clash's record looks like. Yeah, you have the opportunity to validate that. What does it say? You going to press that button or not? Remember, you have to refresh your screen if you were chosen to validate. Waiting, waiting. How about devoted wife? Surely she should be validating. And why are we getting that? Well, I'm just going to segue because I only have 32 seconds. But eventually that process will end in showing that the record's been altered and that I tried to tamper with the nature of the universe. So I just want to conclude by saying that I thought what Charles Hoskinson said earlier in the panel, I mean, many talented people, but the blockchain space is wide open because we have to settle these issues about where to compute, who's in control, and what the reward should be. And there's an enormous space beyond what Satoshi kicked off the party with. And I invite you to dream big in thinking about how you can enter this design space and make the world a better place. I hope that, you can find out what I think the real opportunities are if you ask for the old talk. But I hope that as you pursue your own dreams, you don't lose sight of the original trust that we wanted to be implicit in this original work that we did. It helps build the entire community, and thank you very much.
Holistic solutions from the blockchain island. The Honourable Silvio Schembri explains what is being done on the blockchain island to cater for the influx of companies, from university grants to regulatory initiatives. The Honourable Silvio Schembri, Government of Malta.
Good morning, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I'm very proud to be here. Thanks, Scott, for this very insightful presentation. I really enjoyed it. So good morning to all. It's a pleasure to be addressing you here today. Just a day after the most awaited blockchain laws were enacted on the 4th of July, which have been now put into effect. Operators, investors, entrepreneurs within the blockchain crypto sphere, you can now operate in a jurisdiction with a regulated environment, which ultimately will provide you with legal certainty. I'm proud to say that Malta's agility and fast-moving advantage has put us on the epicenter of the blockchain industry, with other countries are now closely looking at what we have achieved in such a short period of time. We are providing the ideal ecosystem for the industry that is yet in its nascent stage to grow and become, within a few years' time, a strong contributor to Malta's economic growth. As a government, we are fully committed to put Malta on the map of technological innovation. We already have a strong ICT infrastructure, a very talented human capital that we are committed to continue invest to sustain this skill force. But above all, we are driven by a can-do attitude. We come before you with a holistic framework that does not stifle innovation. This framework is based on 3 main pillars: That is market integrity, market stability, and consumer protection. Hence, for this reason, we established the Malta Digital Innovation Authority, which will be responsible for the regulation of innovative technology arrangements. As a government, we did our part. Now, we look forward for you to do yours. Your next step, and important step, is to apply for a license and make Malta your home. The pivotal service provider within these blockchain regulations is undoubtedly the system auditors. These auditors are individuals or legal entities which will act as the bridge between yourselves and the operators and the MDIA. The system auditors are responsible for undertaking audits on innovative technology arrangements in order to ensure that the standards issued by the Malta Digital Innovation Authority are actually being implemented in the innovative technology arrangements. It is also within the responsibility of the system auditor to undertake specific audits for other regulated activities under other national competent authorities, authorities such as the Malta Financial Service Authority and, for example, also the Malta Gaming Authority, depending obviously on the application that you're referring to. On the other hand, companies operating in virtual currencies in and from Malta will now need to obtain a license from the MFSA for their operations. Thus, an application for a license under the VFA Act shall be made slowly through a VFA agent. In this case, the VFA agent will act as the buffer between the authority and the industry. These agents are responsible to oversee that the operators are compliant with all regulations, obligations in respect to the VFA Act, whilst also prepare and submit application to the financial regulator for a VFA licensing activity. All the rules and regulations presented by the MFSA were developed when taking into consideration the existing EU financial service legislation, referred to as MiFID. Also in relation to the provision of investment services, financial markets, and markets abuse regulations. Money laundering is a worldwide challenge that jurisdictions from all over the globe are being faced with. What Malta is going to implement goes above and beyond the DLT asset type, falling within the 5th Anti-Money Laundering Directive. More specifically, all VFA agents and VFA services and all transactions between both fiat to crypto and crypto to crypto will fall under the scope of our AML directive. As a jurisdiction, we want to send a strong message that this industry, to flourish, there is to be no tolerance to money laundering and financing of terrorism. We are aware that we are going into uncharted waters. Thus, we made sure to set up the necessary guidelines and standards in the best interest of the investors, operators, and customers, in aim to protect and strengthen the credibility, seriousness, and the reputation of the Maltese jurisdiction. Let us take, for example, the case of the Malta AI gaming industry. For operators within the gaming industry, it is of great prestige for a gaming company to acquire a Maltese license. This is so as what we have established the highest standard in this sector. The same we intend to do for this new emerging sector. As a government, our vision goes beyond blockchain technology. Now that the laws are into effect, we have already set the ball rolling to explore new areas such as artificial intelligence. Just yesterday, in fact, in the presence of Sophia, which I'm sure a lot of you with us today had the pleasure to meet, we have launched the Malta's AI Task Force, where this task force will be entrusted to develop Malta's AI strategy, make Malta as a center of excellence for artificial intelligence, and create a neutral platform that encourages dialogue on challenges related to AI sector, and also assist us to making feasible recommendations to the government and policy formation. This task force will also act to advise government through recommended areas for development within the innovative technology regulation framework and the AI ethics guidelines. During the past months, we managed to put Malta at the forefront of the blockchain industry. And concerning artificial intelligence, we intend to put Malta amongst the top 10 jurisdictions in the world. In this sector, we believe that Malta can serve as a test bed opportunity for disruptive technology. The digital aspect is like a chain. You cannot explore one aspect and leaving others behind. So technology advancements in various aspects take place at the same pace, one influencing the other. Malta is anticipating all these changes and development in order to become future-proof and home for businesses and investors in this sector. Malta's size does not limit our ambitions. To the contrary, we are using our size to our advantage. Just a decade ago, the Maltese island was best known as a holiday destination, and it still is, but however, our economy has evolved rapidly, registering the highest economic growth amongst our European peers. This means that we have moved away from a physical constraints, and we now aim to be amongst the movers and shakers in this space. To prepare the present and future generation for this economy, as a government, we are in constant discussions with education institutions and entities. This has led to the introduction to a specific blockchain courses at the University of Malta, the launch of a scholarship fund in DLT, and just recently, the government has launched the Meta Emergent Technologies Lab. In Malta, we are laying the foundations to leverage economic innovation, and hence we are eager to know about your projects, to share with us your experiences and know-how, and to be part of Malta's vision in becoming a digital hub. We've come a long way, but look how far we have come to put Malta at the forefront of the technological revolution. I myself look forward to witness what these disruptive technologies will bring about. We are already witnessing the use of blockchain technology within the public service, which is providing better citizens' experience. Now, with the launch of the AI task force, we are exploring what opportunities artificial intelligence holds for Malta and how we can make use of such technology to provide a better service to our citizens. In conclusion, I would like to thank everyone who is being part of our ambitious vision. I would like to thank Amman Police for this incredible initiative in regathering the blockchain community here in Malta. Malta, the blockchain island, is now your home. The legal certainty in our thriving economy is the ideal scenario for startups and already well-established businesses to see your projects come to fruition and continue to flourish. So, with great pleasure, I would like you to welcome to Malta the powerhouse of economic innovation. Thank you very much.
Marrying AI to the blockchain. Vince Vella, University of Malta. Sally Eves, FinTech Blockchain AI. Joseph Dureau, SNIPS. Mark Mueller-Eberstein, Agitech Corporation. Moderated by Angelo Dalli, AI entrepreneur.
Good morning. It's been a really exciting day, as we know, as Honorable Silvio Scambri has mentioned. Yesterday, Malta has launched the AI strategy, which I think is very exciting. I'm part of the committee also that will make sure that Malta has world-class AI legislation. And it's an interesting panel because AI is a black box and quite centralized, while blockchain is transparent and decentralized. So I think we're going to have contrasting words and the marriage of them. We have a very interesting panel here. I'm just going to go through the introductions very, very quickly. Vince is the CTO of Computime, BRS Analytics, and CT Labs, has over 20 years of experience, and is also responsible for the master's course here in FinTech at the University of Malta. Sally Eves is the CEO of the Sustainable Asset Exchange, and she's a member of the Forbes Technology Council, and also the Social Impact Lead for the UK Blockchain Association, and works closely with the United Nations on sustainable development goals. Joseph Duro is the CTO of SNIPS and co-founder of Standard Analytics, a platform that uses edge computing to connect scientific knowledge, and has previously worked at NASA and the Melinda Bill Gates Foundation. And Mark Mueller-Eberstein is the CEO and founder of Agitech Corporation, and is a well-known investor in blockchain, and also a member of the Washington State IoT Council. So I'll start with Joseph. AI requires massive amounts of computation and data. I mean, Andrew Ng, who is one of the leaders in deep learning, has said that the availability of data is one of the drivers that has led to the advances of AI. Blockchain seems to neither have the central data store nor the fast computation. How do you do machine learning without a centralized data store and harvesting of user data?
Okay, so yeah, it's true that to do machine learning you need data and you need computing power. And the idea is not to replace all of it with the blockchain. The idea would be to use blockchain to solve the problems and the needs we have. So I'm going to take an example. So everything we do in my company is voice interfaces. So we do a private voice interface alternative to Alexa. And to do this, basically to train our models, we've been able to reproduce the performances of Google Speech and Alexa by using data sets that we buy and crowdsourcing. So basically data sets that you buy off the shelf, you don't really need to solve that with the blockchain. I think that exists, there are solutions, so that's fine. Crowdsource is actually something that's a very interesting problem to tackle through the blockchain, because today the main platform to run crowdsourcing is Amazon Mechanical Turks. So you have hundreds of thousands of people, of workers, who are working for that platform, completely dependent of what Amazon depends, completely dependent of the margin that Amazon decides to do on that. And on the other hand, you have a lot of companies like us that rely on crowdsourcing and that are also dependent on Amazon. So here you have like a very centralized system that is just an open door for the blockchain to modify and to revolutionize.
And Vince, your interests rotate around computational finance. How do you see this issue of user data, and also how do you see the overlap between the AI and blockchain worlds in managed finance?
So, I mean, the way I see it, I mean, firstly, I mean, machine learning and AI has been applied in finance and computational finance for quite some years now. But with blockchain coming on board, we're seeing how blockchain and the characteristics of blockchain are affecting AI, and how that, in turn, is affecting the application of AI in finance. So we spoke about decentralization. I mean, decentralization when it comes to AI, let's keep it, let's say, simple. When it comes to building models, the traditional way when you're building a model, you're collecting data, centralizing it, and building a central model. So it's quite different from a decentralized environment. When it comes to, for example, transparency, I mean, in blockchain, sort of transparency is a key characteristic. When it comes to AI, it's quite a black box. So we have inputs, we have a set of mathematical models in the middle, and then output, we can see the relationship, but it's not that easy to see what's really happening in the middle. And openness. You have the blockchain environment, which is, let's say, quite one of the characteristics is that it's quite open. You can see the source code, you can see smart contract code, so it's pretty much open for everyone. When it comes to AI, anyone who has built quite interesting models, I doubt it whether they will actually share their models. So how is this affecting finance, like, for example, in situations where AI is being used in managing funds, for example? So obviously what we're seeing is that rather than looking at possibly AI just being a centralized model, we're seeing initiatives like, for example, even in AI research, not just in practice, where, for example, we're seeing things like federated learning, or we're seeing like the popular Numeri, where you have an AI fund, which is being sort of, we have a number of machine learning contributors, and automatically the blockchain is getting all the results or predictions, and somehow the ecosystem is as well giving back rewards to the modelers who are actually contributing to the fund. When it comes to openness and transparency, I mean, anyone who worked in finance and machine learning, you can appreciate that it's sometimes very important that you don't just look at the signal being provided by the model, but sort of you would be really helpful if you can understand why the model is giving that signal. So there are research efforts, like, for example, explainable AI, which is helping to make AI models more explainable, and that will help a lot, that rather than just getting signals before pumping millions of money in your investments, you can actually get a better understanding of why the models are giving those signals. So this is quite active research, which is actually happening in this field.
Very interesting. Mark, I'd like to get your perspectives as an investor. How many blockchain projects have you invested in, and how many of those have been AI?
So we have significant investments in about a little bit over a dozen of blockchain projects globally. So we helped the folks from Disney leaving Disney and founding Dragon Chain. We helped the in Southeast Asia changing payment system with Ponti. And but before I go into I love blockchain, I love AI, and I would love to see them two coming together. And no, we have not found a project right now that combines blockchain and AI. We see a lot of pitches that see blockchain, AI, autonomous driving, IoT, all of them ideally together, trying to raise a lot of money, but none of them really are working at this point, I think, in a way that an investor could recoup their investments in a significant way.
I see. Sally, I mean, one of my personal interests is the application of ethical AI, AI that impacts society positively. I know that you've set up aspirational futures to deal specifically with this and other technology. How do you see blockchain impacting AI and society positively?
Yeah, aspirational futures is all about the purpose of technology. And when we're looking at advanced technology such as blockchain and AI, sometimes this human side of tech gets a little bit left behind and underexplored. So with aspirational futures, it's been supported by Sachs as part of a real ecosphere for business development, also social impact at scale. We're developing the talent here. We're looking at inclusion and diversity. So who's building the AI? We need a real inclusion and diversity of perspectives to actually embed that into development. Also, we're looking at aspects like opening up opportunity. So we have hubs for aspirational futures around the world, including developing areas which are sometimes left behind. So it's all about social impact at scale, looking at these projects, supporting development, and also having cross-sectoral voices. So as well as fantastic events like this, a blockchain and crypto community, a little bit more specific, this panel's great because we've got a range of perspectives here from academia, practice, and business. And I think we need more of that. We need cross-sector conversations and also really good quality information that's going to the more mainstream public so that everybody can get involved in these conversations.
Excellent. And Joseph, data privacy is obviously something that links to the social impact. I mean, how do you see that, in your opinion, can you make crypto run in a more private environment that protects the rights of the individual to privacy while balancing the needs of AI to have access to the data and learn from it?
So we mentioned the need of data to train good machine learning models. I mentioned crowdsourcing, but actually the real thing that you need to have the best performances is raw user data, because that's where you're going to apply your model. But then you have a privacy problem. So federated learning was mentioned. So I don't know if anyone is familiar with this. Basically, it's a new type of machine learning where instead of centralizing the data on the server to train the model, basically the data stays where it is, so on people's devices, and you send the models to the data. Each model is going to learn locally, and then you aggregate the models together in a way that has learned from anyone but hasn't needed to centralize the data at any time. So doing that with the blockchain is probably a good idea because you want to incentivize people to give you access to the data. But what you need to do on top of that, when you aggregate the models, there's still information about what they've been learning locally. So you want to aggregate these models in a private way. So that's where cryptography comes into play. And what people are looking at is multi-party computation, so a way to aggregate and to mix these models that have learned locally in a way that doesn't leak the information of what they've been learning on each device. So federated learning mixing with multi-party computation is probably something that we're going to be hearing about more and more.
So you may all hate me for the statement that I'm about to make, but I believe that the blockchain infrastructure at the moment is too slow for large-scale AI applications. So Vince here has done a lot of research on smart contracts. I mean, how do you see that smart contracts that can run at scale rather than just having a few thousand transactions and crash? How can they actually run in the future? Can we do this?
I mean, obviously, there's a lot of research happening in that field, and sort of, you know, it's obviously something which is required, I think, if we really want to see the sort of smart contracts applied throughout. However, sort of, I will try to overlap a bit with AI. So since obviously the topic here is on AI, and I wish to mention maybe certain aspects where AI can help. So when it comes to speed, for example, we're seeing a lot of issues, like, for example, areas which are being investigated is the idea of sharding, for example. So, okay, I mean, maybe AI can help. So when we think about AI at the end of the day, is basically we have a set of mathematical functions which, at the end of the day, give us an output which help us infer certain outcomes, and those help us take certain decisions. But by doing so, we're taking a probabilistic approach rather than deterministic, which is more probably the case in the blockchain world. But that probabilistic approach typically helps us to speed up matters, in the sense, rather than maybe going through heavy processing and sort of through all the data, et cetera, that helps us to make efficient decisions. So linking back with performance, the idea is normally where AI fits is where you look at processes, now being it the blockchain as a system or any business process or whatever, and we identify certain inefficiencies, that is where AI can help. So if, for example, we're saying that there is scalability issues or certain performance issues, maybe with the proof of work algorithm, maybe with scalability, sharding, et cetera, all these, for me, are like possible improvement points where something like AI can actually help. And this is the way I see it.
Mark, do you see that the investment then should focus more on the basic research to actually create infrastructure that can handle AI in blockchain?
I think there's a lot of groundwork that still needs to be done. I think the argument you said earlier, so it sounds like in the early 90s when it took like, oh, this internet thing is too slow because it took like a picture when you downloaded it was built up like line by line, and now we do 4K video streaming at home. It's just a question of time until the performance is there. But yes, you're right. We need to make investments in the infrastructure, and that doesn't happen in 2 months. I mean, if you look at Maker, for example, they worked for 4 years to create an infrastructure, to create a potential new financial system. I think if we're looking at AI, the same thing. We need to understand it from an academic perspective, what's necessary, what's required, but also you have the key AI players. I mean, it's really hard to compete with companies like Google, Amazon, Microsoft that have huge amount of data for their engines to learn it. Face recognition, there's 1 or 2 companies that have basically cornered the market outside of China. That's because they have so much data. The machines can learn so quickly. So it's really a complete industry, I think, approach that needs to happen. And academic can play a key role there as well. And yes, please, if you have great ideas, send them my way.
What do you see as the investment opportunities actually in between the overlap between blockchain and AI?
As I said, we're looking at a lot of pitches. We haven't made an investment in that space, but I think I'm looking at community approaches. I mean, Ethereum was not originally an investment opportunity. It was figuring out how you can create a smart contract environment, so people that are passionate about fixing a problem. So we are looking for people that are in organizations that saying, okay, the AI is a huge opportunity, and I think communication and transactions between AIs, for example, need to be solved. And it could be solved with an independent blockchain. So who is building that? Who is bringing these pieces together? And yes, then there are investment opportunities coming out of that, but it's the underlying things that need to be solved first.
And Sally, do you think that users should be compensated for their data on the blockchain? Would this be a very good use of blockchain? And also, what do you see are the implications beyond just the business considerations?
Yes, short answer is absolutely yes. I mean, we're at the moment, we're in a period of a 17-year period of lack of trust. And that goes beyond business. It goes to charities, social enterprise, government, NGOs. The Endelman Group just did a big study in that recently. So trust is at the heart of this. And yes, we need a shared value model. So we're bringing business benefits and social impact benefits together so that everybody benefits in that. And I think that goes beyond data itself. It also goes through the processes. For example, if we look at agritech, from the farmer right to your plate, we need everybody rewarded in that process. So also when we're talking about blockchain and AI, we should be going beyond that as well. There are many emergent technologies that we can integrate, from RFID tagging to drones to UAVs. All of these are coming together, so we need to look at it slightly more than just a blockchain and AI marriage perspective as well. I think we need to go more broader than that. But absolutely, yes, I think going forward, the shared value model for business is where we should be going. We need to put the trust back.
Yes. And Joseph, do you think that edge computing can be a solution?
Edge computing is a way to not having to centralize the data. So edge computing as a way, so for machine learning, you have training and you have inference. So training is when your model learns from data, and inference is when it makes predictions. So first of all, inference on the edge is the first step of decentralization. So basically you want to run the engine that makes predictions as close to the user as possible so that you don't need to centralize the data. And that's actually just an engineering problem in a way, because the thing has already been trained. You just need to be able to find locally the resources to run your model. And in most cases, that's possible. We actually run a speech recognition engine that's as good as Google's on the Raspberry Pi 3, so that's possible. For training, as I said, federated learning is something that's going to be learning locally, and then you aggregate the learnings of everything. Doing that on the edge, so that local training on the edge, that's something that no one is looking at. So we're talking to semiconductor producers. They're doing neural chips, but all of these are meant for inference. Training on the edge is something that's quite beyond what people are thinking of today, but that's probably something that we should start looking at.
Since we have like the last round, so do you see a question for all the panelists? Do you see a more energy efficient, first of all, blockchain 2.0 emerging? I'll start from Vince.
So in terms of energy efficiency, I mean, like looking at AI again, as I said, this is why it all boils down to efficiency, and this is where there is lack of efficiency maybe, or where improvements can be done. That is where AI can fit, because it's purposely created for that, to identify ways how we can improve certain process. So definitely I can see, this is why I mentioned before even like the proof of work type of algorithms. These are situations where I believe there is a lot of space for AI where I can help. Something else, since this is the last round, what I wish to mention is with regard to smart contracts, because I believe sort of this is really important. We're seeing sort of in the AI space on its own, we're seeing that obviously AI is being applied to a lot of situations, being it in finance, being it in medical, but basically we're saying that they're being applied in very important decisions with extremely kind of possibly even life-threatening kind of situations. So I think in the panel, one of the panels that we had before, they mentioned the idea of the legal aspect, which is supported by smart contracts, and I wish to extend that underneath that, the third layer, I see AI. Why? Because AI, I see it as the layer underneath, and they need, or sort of the ideal way, in my opinion, is that they need a front end managed by smart contracts. Because there needs to be a layer that if I'm accessing a web service, if I'm accessing an AI algorithm through a web service, I need certain commitment in terms of the performance that algorithm is giving me. So these obligations, I think, need to as well be sort of, cover the AI algorithms as well. So I think smart contracts fit a lot in this space.
Thank you, Vince. Sally?
Okay, we've got 38 seconds, so very quickly, yes, we can't have a juxtaposition with environmental impact and mining cost, but certainly the partners we're working with, the developments in that space are rapidly escalating. So yes, absolutely, it's the next level.
Excellent. And yeah, Joe? The last bit?
Yeah, efficiency is important, and especially if you're going to have a system that relies on the blockchain, you want to make sure that you're not sharing resources with other people that are going to take it from you when you did it. So application-specific blockchains are today potentially a solution.
There's definitely a reason why Bitcoin's inefficiency actually makes a perfect sense for the transaction sizes. We are looking at AI. We need far more efficient systems. But for all of you, I think the key is focus on the customers, focus on adding real value to the environment, and then value comes to you as well, and for all of us, for the ecosystem. And I think there's huge value in blockchain, huge value in AI. Let's bring them together.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I hope that you'll find the AI interesting. Thank you. Cheers.
The dark side of the chain. Fasten your seatbelts. An animated discussion is about to take center stage. John McAfee, McAfee Crypto Team. Brandon Smetana, Skycoin. Moderated by Monty Mumford, Mob76.
Morning. How are you? How are you? Oh, come on. John, get them going.
How are you guys? All right.
Excellent.
It's too early for you. I know. It's too early for me.
Oh, really, dude. Same here. We're going to talk about the dark web. We're going to talk about the dark chain. And we're going to find some stories for you that will probably make you laugh. So, I'm an idiot. About a month ago, my wallet was hacked. I lost...
Welcome aboard.
And that happened to you too.
8 months ago, my wallet was hacked. One of my security here at the end, his wallet was hacked 2 weeks later. Welcome to the Wild West of crypto.
Well, welcome to the winners. Brandon, have you ever been hacked?
I wrote the wallet, so no.
Did you? I looked at your Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
You've done some funny shit, man. Tell us more about the dark side of your life.
Oh, I don't even know where to start. So I was in a Bitcoin from the beginning, and I've just seen crazy shit. I can't even talk about it.
You sure?
So I got like kidnapped like 3 months ago, and like 4 members of my marketing team.
You were kidnapped?
In my house, yeah, home invasion. I had 4 members of my marketing team came in, and they hired 5 gang members, beat the shit out of me, broke my rib, knocked a tooth out. And
where was this? Which city?
In Shanghai.
Whoa.
And beat the shit out of my wife, and then they're like, give us 10,000 Bitcoin or we'll kill you. And I'm like, I don't have 10,000 Bitcoin. and they're in jail now for like a while, like 10 years. But
I mean, I'm really sorry about what happened to you and your wife. Clearly,
I've had worse.
But you've had worse?
Yeah.
Go on then.
I'm not talking about that.
Should you say more? Yes or no?
Let's have more.
Come on.
This was funny because every week the Wikipedia editors would delete the page about Skycoin because they said, oh, you're not noteworthy enough. You don't have enough articles. Then after the kidnapping, we had like 50 news articles about the kidnapping. So then they couldn't delete the Wikipedia article anymore, but now the whole Wikipedia article was about the kidnapping.
Oh,
God forbid kidnappers come into my house.
The world, clearly you're a man that knows it.
I'm surrounded by Navy SEALs and the U.S. Marines. Seriously, okay? 2 of them are over here. Please, God, we have more guns than the U.S. Army.
This was... Which was the guy, I'm sorry to point you out, who lost your Bitcoin, was it? Yeah.
Yeah, that was...
I think we should all get together and get our money back. Yeah? Let's have a vigilante group, yeah? If we can talk about that later, that would be awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, so, yeah, we've been victims of the dark web, the dark side. Do you think they thought they were going to get Bitcoins?
They thought they were going to steal, like, hundreds of millions of dollars, and that they were going to, like, go retire in Fiji, and like, and I think they told me like they're gonna take me to the mountains and kill me if they got the money. I'm like, if you're gonna kill me, why am I gonna give you anything? Just kill me already, you know?
Absolutely. You're a brave guy. There was an example in the UK where someone did the same thing and said, give us all your Bitcoin. And so the guy just gave him he gave him his public key. And they were, awesome. No, clearly they couldn't get any. Well, as you say, John, it's the Wild West, right?
It is the Wild West, absolutely. And 9 out of 10 companies don't really exist. I mean, I audit every company that I deal with. And 3 months ago, I audited a company out of Africa where every single director, developer, and employee did not even exist. They had fake photos and fake ID. You know, everything was fake. There was nobody there. And this is not uncommon. So 9 out of 10 companies. I was talking to a gentleman last night that was negotiating with one of the large exchanges for, you know, to get listed, and gave them a bunch of money and found out that who they were negotiating with was not the real exchange. You've got to be careful.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a dangerous
Absolutely.
fucking world.
You also did something quite extraordinary, which may appeal to some of the dodgy men in the audience, but a coin for prostitutes.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
absolutely. In fact,
so you don't see the bad thing, you don't see it on the credit card bill, the happy ending. You just
I actually advised a group called Pink Date. You know, they contacted me and said, "Will you help?" I was like, "Well, fuck yes! What a great idea!" So you know, if you're using cryptocurrency, your wife is not going to see your credit card bill and go, "Hey, what's this $200 for?" or $500, or depending where you are. And so, so I go, "Oh, sure." But they never could get their act together. I mean, their pimps are always moving into other cities and what have you. But you know, I tried for a while. But why not? I mean, the cryptocurrency will be in every single industry. Why not prostitution?
Brothel coin.
What's that?
Brothel coin or something like that.
Yes.
Or a happy ending coin.
This is actually the Pink Date coin, is what they were trying to.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely.
We were also talking about real life experiences. We've heard about yours, Brandon. It's a terrible one, and I'm glad they were brought back to justice. Now, you, sir, when you left Belize, you had an interesting time.
Well, you know, first of all, I'd been on the run for 45 days. For the past the past 20 of those days, I was in an attic right next door to the Queen Street police station. All right, so they're not going to look for me there. I mean, you have to eat. I had to go out and buy food and drink and things. So people would pass me on the street and not even look at me because I was next door to the station. So the way I escaped is I arranged...
But hang on, what were you banged up for? I mean, what were they after you for?
Oh, allegedly for murder, okay? But they had killed my neighbor, for fuck's sake. I'd been at war with the country for months. So no, they just... And by the way, I wasn't charged with anything ever. Right. What they did is my neighbor was shot. All of the neighbors were questioned. Right. They wanted to question me. Well, fuck no, I'm not getting my fingers removed in some back room. So... but at any rate, I had arranged with Vice magazine, who sent 2 reporters down to Belize to monitor everything, including my escape or my arrest, whichever were to happen. So they were both white. I was white. I had Robert King, the famous war photographer. He was there. And one of my ex-girlfriends who looks white. And then I had retained a close friend, a Belizean, that had a van with the visitor, you know, with the tourist logo on the side. So what I had done is I had been watching the weather reports. I waited until there was 100% chance of rain.
Why on earth?
Pardon?
Why?
Because they had roadblocks every 10 miles on every road looking for me.
When it's raining, the police won't be watching.
I know for a fact the police in Belize do not stand in the fucking rain and check cars. So I have photos of us driving by, police who are huddled in their trucks looking at us with my photograph on the dashboard. Okay, and they're watching us drive by. That's how I escaped, yes. So that got me to the border of Guatemala. Then I had a friend who looked like me with my documentation get arrested across the border in Mexico.
You arranged yourself to be arrested.
And here's why, because they had the Coast Guard blocking all the sea exits from Belize. So I knew for a fact the Prime Minister is so stupid, he would believe it, which he did, and had the Coast Guard moved all the way to the northern border. The next morning, I took a fishing boat out to sea and into Livingston in Guatemala. So that was it.
Very good story. Brandon, well, there you go. You ever been arrested?
No.
No?
Oh, you're missing out, dude. I'm going to tell you now.
But you change your name every year. I thought that was
no,
why.
dude.
I thought you were on the run.
No, I was on the like the dark net and the like the remix networks and the stuff like before Bitcoin, like there was like Hashcash and Chomcash and a bunch. There was this one that was funny. It was called Al-Qaeda.net because they were like trolling the FBI and like always screwing with them and giving them the middle finger, and they were always the FBI was always trying to hack them, and they're always
Yeah.
It's like I don't know. You know, cypherpunks.
Cyberpunks, absolutely. What's your favourite prison?
Mexico.
Mexico.
Oh, good God! It's like party time. I mean, they put 14 or 15 people in a tiny cell. People are telling stories. You know, they're getting booze and marijuana. You know, coming into the cell. Fuck me! I'd rather be in a Mexico jail than anywhere.
Really?
Yeah, I've been arrested a few times in America. The last time was for a DUI. I spent 48 hours in jail. Good God, is that boring?
Oh, I bet.
Now, they put you in a cell by yourself. It's all gray, you know. The food's terrible. Goddamn Mexico, absolutely. If you want to have a jail experience, I recommend it strongly.
You heard it here first. We've only got about 5 minutes. I think it would be great. I mean, you've got amazing stories. But maybe a couple of questions, maybe the first couple of questions directed at Brandon. I think he's a legend in his own right anyway.
Absolutely.
Has anyone got a question for Brandon? Please. No, come on. One person. I'll buy you a drink afterwards. Okay, we better just get on, Brandon.
Hmm?
We better just get on with it then. Just
With
keep
what?
talking.
Just keep talking.
Good
Okay,
man.
go.
Right, and I'll buy you a drink later. Good man. Thank you so much. The rest of you can fuck off.
I agree.
When I started in Bitcoin, it was all these libertarians, and we were like going to take out the Federal Reserve, and and we were going to get rid of the central banks, and that's why everyone created. That's why like Bitcoin was created. It was, there's much like Ron Paul supporters, and it was actually pretty funny because like a lot of the crypto people, all of them work for the U.S. government. They all have security clearance, and no one put their name on it, and they're all like. Constitution thumping, like I hate the government, kill the government, and they have all these guns, but then they actually work for the Department of Defense. So that was pretty funny. And so the whole idea behind Bitcoin was that you would create this money that would be backed by mathematics instead of being backed by humans, because humans are corrupt. And then in the last 2 years, it became like, ICO, money raining from the sky. I need to raise $2 billion. Give me I have a,
yes.
They're just like shitcoin ICOs. And so the whole market sort of, you had these financial crisis in 2008. And that's what brought Bitcoin from $1 to $1,000. And people forgot what the origin of Bitcoin was, which was the idea to have a money or financial system that was backed by mathematics instead of by corrupt humans. And people just forgot that as soon as money started showing up. Like, I remember Bitcoin, when it hit $100, everyone in LA that had owned Bitcoin was basically buying, like had all these hot girls showed up. They had a new car. They quit their job. And one of the guys asked him, what are you doing? He's like, I'm condo shopping. I'm like, that's your new job? So he's just like going out every day shopping for condos and going out at night with like these 4 hot blonde girls, like doing cocaine and partying. And he has his friends who still have the office job, his coworkers, and he's like, oh, let's party. They're like, I can't party. I have to wake up at 8 a.m. tomorrow. I can't party every night. I can't do cocaine every night. I can't do this. And so so what's happening with Bitcoin now, and people ask why people need Bitcoin, and what's most interesting, or why they need blockchain, you look at like Argentina, or you look at Turkey, like 2 weeks ago, their currency just collapsed, and people had 50% of their savings wiped out overnight. Or Cyprus, the government's broke, and they go into your bank account, into your pocket, and grab like 70% of your money and call it a bail-in, and they just steal your money to pay their debt. And so the whole financial system is basically a debt Ponzi. And the new financial system is going to be built on top of blockchain, because the old financial system it works until it doesn't work, and then you need.
But I'd have a question for that, right? So I agree with you totally, but when my wallet was looted, right, as someone that's moving into a new world, away from a centralised bank that's turned me over for 30 years and charged me £5 on a ATM transaction for €100 or whatever, my bank would have saved my money.
No,
right?
they wouldn't.
I would have got my 50k back if someone had hacked my account. And then I'm pushed back into the world of traditional centralised banking. And I'm reasonably sorted. I'm not an idiot. Do you know what I mean? But I just wonder whether the mass adoption of crypto is, if it's like an old lady that's got €5,000 and she thinks, well, I want to put it into a safe place. That's a long way away, right?
No,
I think that's the wrong approach. You're putting your money into crypto in order to make money as an investment. That's the problem. That is the fundamental problem, is it not? Use the fuckers. Yeah. Use it. That's what it's intended for. The power and the value comes from how many people are using it, how many transactions. Fuck me. If we took all of the money in our wallets and started buying shit with it, that would cause crypto to go, right?
But I can see a wave beginning in that area. Like if you travel to Riga in Latvia, you can pay in Bitcoin with certain Baltic Air, I think. And there are places where I don't think people know enough of where they can spend their Bitcoin. Do you know what I mean? I would rather never use fiat currency again.
Fucking use Google. You can buy cars, houses. You can order fucking pizza from some places. We drove by in a little town in Lexington, Tennessee, a few months ago, a restaurant. We accept Bitcoins. I wasn't hungry, but I said, we're stopping here to eat. So, no, use it.
We have a debt Ponzi. People, I don't think, understand how the global economy works, and the people who understand are never going to actually talk or tell the public. And they're like, okay, we have this problem, we can't fix it, and this is going to happen. The pension funds aren't going to get paid. How do we make money from this? That's their only concern. Like, no one actually. They're like, okay, I have this problem. You want to fix it? Are you going to pay for it? No. Do you want to pay for it? No. Do you want? So they have the problem. No one wants to pay for the solution. So then they turn and say, okay, since this problem is going to happen and no one's going to fix it, how do we get rich off it? And so they're looking at this. It's really interesting because when I was doing Bitcoin, you would have these idiots, like these narcissists, and we'd put them out at front and say, yeah, he's the lead developer, yeah. And we were seeing if the government was going to send a SWAT team and like go into his house and shoot him in the face, or if he was going to get tortured, or we thought they were going to like take him out. So you have these like canary people that were just wanted to be in the spotlight, and we were going to see if like they got shot. And what happened was the billionaires and the trillionaires and they actually came in, and they're the ones pushing blockchain now. Like Soros, I went to Israel, and Soros invested $20 million in this company, and he invested $40 million in this one, and this, Goldman Sachs invested in this, and JP Morgan invested in this. And so it's actually not only just a revolution at the bottom, a grassroots revolution, but it's actually being pushed at the top. And I'm like, why, if these people own the banking system, why are they promoting blockchain if it's going to take them out?
Absolutely.
And because they know that it's not going to last forever. It's actually very unstable. It's a debt Ponzi, basically.
You agree, John?
It says kindly conclude.
No, well,
There's an ugly motherfucker back here with a baseball bat.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask if anyone had a question for John.
One more.
You can fuck off. You can't ask a question because you didn't ask him a question. I'm very sorry. You had your opportunity. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, John.
All right.
Transforming industries through blockchain innovations. Challenges, opportunities, and successful projects. The impact that blockchain has had on industry. Marc Tavernier, Bitfury.
Well, good morning, everybody. Follow that, huh? So 2 things I'll agree with from that. Number 1, when John said we should start using Bitcoin, we should. All of you who have got Bitcoin in your wallets, start spending it. You can find stores, you can find restaurants here. In fact, just across from my hotel, there's a restaurant called Caviar and Bull. If you want to go and eat, go drink, even go smoke a cigar, they take Bitcoin. The second thing I'll agree with is the statement that I think was made by John again, which is 1 in 10 or 9 out of 10 companies are not as solid as they should be in this space. So that means 1 out of 10 is probably a reputable, solid company with a strong background. And that's where we as Bitfury come in. So my name is Mark, as you saw. I work for a company called Bitfury. We were established in 2011, which makes us one of the longest serving Bitcoin or blockchain companies in this space. We have about 500 people working in our company across 16 countries. And we have data centers that process transactions in 5 different countries now. So I've been asked to speak to you about some of the large implementations of blockchain. And I'm going to talk to you about a few examples. But before I do, I want to come back to Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Because as far as I'm concerned, to date, the largest implementation of a successful blockchain platform is cryptocurrency. Bitcoin has been around for coming up for 10 years now. We celebrated the 10th anniversary of the Satoshi white paper just a couple of days ago. Hands up all of you who bought some Bitcoin to celebrate. At a blockchain conference? Really? Guys, come on. Hands up those of you who celebrated yesterday, 1 November, with a legislation being passed here in Malta, huh? Wow, blockchain conference, no one celebrating, or you just daren't admit it. So my view would be very strongly that cryptocurrencies, and in particular Bitcoin, is one of the most successful applications to date of blockchain technologies. And as Bitfury, we're very proud to be processing up to 11% of the global Bitcoin transactions. So that's securing these transactions and conducting mining across our infrastructure. And some of the other applications that we've built out at significant scale now allow those who are interested to access this space. So we design and manufacture our own hardware, and we package that up into interesting opportunities for anybody who wants to get into this space. So if you are a fund, if you're an exchange, if you're a high net worth individual, we can sell you our chips and our reference design, and you can go and build your own mining machines and deploy them. But perhaps you don't have the technical knowledge, actually, from the show of hands about how many have bought Bitcoin or how many have been out celebrating. Maybe you don't have that technical knowledge. So if you don't want to get involved, just on the screen there, you can see what is a 40-foot shipping container that we have created as a portable Bitcoin mining solution. So we can sell these instances of this asset to individuals, to funds, and to organizations who want to get involved in this space. We can deploy those in one of our data centers across Iceland, Norway, the USA, Canada, and the Republic of Georgia, and we can provide a managed service. So if you are interested in that space, you don't have to touch the technology. You simply collect the Bitcoins that it mines on a monthly basis. We take care of the management, but you own the asset. So as far as we're concerned, that's a pretty large deployment of blockchain technology as an application. It provides an access point for those who want to gain some exposure to this asset class, as it's now being called, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. But what I've been asked to talk to you about today is more of a focus on the software side that's been termed blockchain, and what are the solutions that we provide there. So given that we call ourselves a full-service blockchain company, which extends through from processing transaction to building our own hardware, to selling that hardware to high net worths, all the way to the back end of building software solutions for governments, for whole countries, for exchanges to do analytics and KYC and AML, and something called a Lightning Network, which allows microtransactions to occur as a side chain on the Bitcoin blockchain. We have a range of 3 software solutions, some of which I'd like to talk to you about today. So the first one is land registry. We've been very busy around the world working with governments to create land registry solutions using blockchain that solve some of the problems that are present. And those problems really are based around trust. Trust between citizens and the government is something which has been eroded. There was a really interesting study conducted by Edelman. I think it was probably about 4 or 5 months ago. If you Google it on the web, you'll see, but a shockingly large number of those respondents, close to 60% of the respondents, indicated that they had close to 0 trust in their governments or in the corporations that they are forced to do business with. So by putting land registry on the blockchain, we solve some of those challenges. And we are super proud as Bitfury to have been working with the government in the Republic of Georgia to build what is so far the world's largest blockchain solution deployed across a whole country. So what we did with the Republic of Georgia and the government there was we took their existing land registry processes and we added blockchain into the elements, which now means if you are a citizen in the Republic of Georgia, you have irrefutable proof that what oftentimes is probably going to be your most valuable asset in your life is yours. And nobody can take that away from you. The certificate can't be falsified. Thank you. One clap. You're getting a beer later on. So are you. If you all clap, you'll get some free Bitcoin. How about that? Hey! I'm joking. Force majeure, I am not allowed to say things like that. Could you scrub it, please, there in the streaming booth? But in all seriousness, what this has done in the Republic of Georgia is it's re-empowered citizens. It's given citizens the opportunity to have trust in a system without needing to trust people. And this is something that was mentioned by the wonderful panel earlier on, which is people are not really very trustworthy, unfortunately. If you see a 50-euro note on the floor and someone's watching you, you'll probably pick it up and look around to see if you should give it to someone. If you see a 50-euro note on the floor and there's no one watching you, what goes through your mind? I know all of you. What goes through your mind is, I wonder if I should keep this. So naturally, as humans, we're not very trustworthy. So with over 300,000 of the land titles in the Republic of Georgia now working on the blockchain, the citizens can have trust in something, which means they don't have to trust people. We've been doing the same in Bermuda. So Bermuda, rather like Malta, is creating a blockchain island. And we've been supporting the government in Bermuda by building a land registry service alongside what they've already got to help them realize the vision of their blockchain strategy. And that provides similar benefits for the people who are the receivers of these land titles. But why do we focus on land registry? Well, it's really quite simple. We were explained that there was an opportunity here, which is less than 1 in 3 people around the world have the ability to prove that they own their most valuable asset. So if we say there are probably 500 people in this room, that means 130 of you, when you go home, back to your home countries, or if you live in Malta, back to your house this evening, there is a high probability that someone somewhere could change the ownership records of your house or your land, and you could have those locks changed and be out on the street without the chance to prove that you own it. It's quite shocking. And if you want a commercial incentive, that means there's about $20 trillion in capital which cannot be collateralized because you can't prove that you own it. So in the Republic of Georgia, the tangible results are that a process which previously took 3 days now takes just 10 minutes. And in the Republic of Georgia, within that business process, they estimate that they save about 90% of the costs that they were previously putting in. We've also run some projects for social good with Coca-Cola, where there was an issue in the supply chain to do with workers' rights. So we created a ledger where copies of the contracts are stored. So those workers, who oftentimes are quite lowly paid, can now have confidence that their contracts are not changed as they move up and down the supply chain, take different jobs in different places. And finally, analytics and investigation, which is super, I think, relevant to Malta at the moment. We've created an analytics tool that we call Crystal Blockchain, which allows organizations, governments, and individuals to run their own AML, their own anti-money laundering investigations into Bitcoin transactions, wallets, exchanges, and individuals, and determine the level of risk that might be associated with those particular transactions, individuals, wallets, and even exchanges. This addresses a big challenge, and one of those I'm going to show you is the final example before I say goodbye, which is where we use this tool through our analysts to look at the recent hack of the BitHum exchange. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with that, but it was just over 2,000 Bitcoins that was stolen, and with the information that BitHum gave us, we were able to identify that those Bitcoins that were stolen went into 38 different addresses, that a number of them, nearly 2,000, were sent to a particular exchange, and that 29 were sent to a gaming company. And with that data, we could go back to BitHum and say, post-event, here is the analysis which may allow you to identify those individuals who hacked the exchange or even the wallets of the guys who are on stage later. So we leverage our nearly 9 years operational experience in the Bitcoin blockchain to bring these tools to organizations who want to help grow the ecosystem. And that concludes a quick whistle-stop tour through some of the applications that we've been building to show how blockchain can be built at massive scale. Thanks ever so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Finally, a big shout to Eman and the team, who I think have put on the best blockchain show in Europe this year. So well done, guys. We really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Is your business blockchainable? A distinguished panel of experts discuss the different aspects that a business must possess to embrace blockchain. Michaela Uliru, Endor.com. Antoine Verdon, Proxius. Paul Claudius, Blockstate. Max Krupishev, Qubits. Moderated by Anton Dalli, BCA.
Morning, everyone. Basically, before we joined this panel, we were discussing between us the current state of affairs of the blockchain. Everybody is speaking about this new technology, how it is a game changer, how it will change the future of doing business. Myself, I actually am an evangelist of that. But to be honest, how many applications are actually out there that have implemented the blockchain in real life? Apart from the presentation that we had by the gentleman before us, I think it is really a handful. In fact, I compared the current state of the blockchain to the internet before the invention of the browser. There were a couple of techies out there who used tools such as Telnet to communicate with other techies on the internet, but that was practically it. Then there was the invention of the World Wide Web, the browser, email clients, and that was when the actual people on the street started adopting this new technology. In fact, the internet itself didn't change much from then. It was only the applications on top of it that changed. But unfortunately, the blockchain is not a magic wand that can be used for any industry out there. In fact, this is one of the questions I would like to ask my panelists up here today. Which industries do you think really benefit from the implementation of blockchain as their underlying technology?
Yes. Well, there are a few properties of blockchain which definitely make a difference. So wherever you need a truth machine, immutability, traceability, provenance, where you need to prove things, supply chain is a no-brainer, provenance of diamonds like Everledger. But wherever you need to prove, for example, property, identity, whenever you need to prove value, like the case of Sapient Network, which is the Facebook on blockchain. I will tell about this a bit later. It's a system of accounting. The US government, the Pentagon, namely, lost $1 billion this year, and nobody can find $1 billion at the US government. So with blockchain, this wouldn't happen. For now, these are the industries I think are most affected.
I personally think every single industry will use blockchain in the future. Maybe not for everything, but I think blockchain is, you can look at it as the same type of revolution you had as the internet was coming, right? Just we don't see all aspects of the technology now because there are no clear models for a lot of fields. And we're pretty much at the time where, in terms of internet, we would be like 20 years ago when you would open a page and the image would go down like this, and it's very bad infrastructure. If you had asked people 20 years ago, will you need an internet website, most people would not have really understood the question. They would have said maybe, but there was no clear model for them. And I think it's the same for blockchain. If you ask yourself, will I need blockchain in the future? Of course, it's going to change the whole way businesses are structured. Do you have a clear way to apply it? Not yet, or maybe you can have a vision, but it's still not exactly defined which path it's going to take.
Yeah, I very much agree. I think as a business, you need to ask yourself the question, does blockchain really add any value to what I'm doing here? And what's really essential for businesses when they look at blockchain as an application case, as we were saying, Anton, we need some infrastructure and building blocks that can be used by these businesses to actually create value in what they're doing, enabled through blockchain. And I think until we're not at this stage, as you're saying, an internet browser which can be used as an interface to access content and data, we need the same thing for blockchain. So, and this is what we're also, how I came in this space. So we saw there's a need of financial data in this space, and we're providing this. Just one example for building block. I think this is really the start that businesses can actually create value with blockchain applications.
Yeah, so in order to repeat a lot of the things, I completely agree with the speakers and Bitfury, right? And I'm a strong believer that the land registry and governments really like implementing the blockchain will really help to make it more open and clear and auditable and immutable and so on. The main challenge that I see right now, like for example with the big businesses, right, huge businesses, for them integrating any sort of blockchain technology is a very big hassle and challenge, right? Because the systems which they use, they already have them implemented for years or decades even, like the frameworks which they use. So for them, integrating this new approach is a very big hassle. So I think that it should start from relatively small businesses, right, which are still quite flexible, right, to show good examples and the proof of the concept to the big businesses, right, to the huge machines, FMCG companies, and so on.
So we mentioned different industries. Do you have any particular applications, examples that you've been involved with that you can share with us today?
My favorite one is the advertisement industry. The power of disintermediation that blockchain brings enables the direct business to consumer linkage. So now we do not, advertisers and brands wouldn't need to pay the Googles and the Facebooks of the world, this centralized behemoth, all the money, but they can instead reward those who are really interested in the product and are watching an advertisement, for example, with a coupon of a discount, and so on and so forth. So that's I think, a really game changer for me.
There's a pretty cool application we've been working on recently that makes blockchain very tangible and concrete for me. It's a certification solution. We've been developing it together with the University of Basel in Switzerland, coming from the idea that a lot of employers, especially in regulated industries, in banking, audits, are now requested every time to certify the academic credentials of their future employees. And every time a university needs to provide those information, it takes a lot of time. For Basel, it takes about 90 minutes for every request, because first they have to get consent from the person to give their personal information to the employer, and then they have to get back to the employer. And it's a huge issue. I mean, if you look at the recent UNESCO studies, about 30% of the people in the world have fake credentials on their CV somehow, sometimes just a little exaggerated, like you pay $10,000 for a summer MBA in Stanford, and then you write, have a Stanford MBA or stuff like this. So it's a huge issue. And for them, we could build a blockchain solution which allows them to issue all certificates in PDF, hash the PDF, send the certificates to the students that they can give them to the employers, and the employers have a drag-and-drop interface where they can very easily verify the documents without this intermediary of the university, and that's something we're rolling out where I think everyone can save costs. So for me, it's a very concrete example.
I think every industry can use blockchain where trust is essential and where you have currently centralized ledgers which need to be accessed by multiple parties. So when you look, I mean, especially the financial industry, obviously, I might have a particular view on this because we're working in this area, is very much impacted by it. And I think as a start, when we look at data, for example, we're building a so-called DIA Foundation, which is a crossbreed of Wikipedia meets Bloomberg. So Bloomberg is a really centralized party providing data, and it's not very accessible to a nascent ecosystem. So if you're building a DApp which requires financial data, it's very hard to get good quality financial data. So opening up this to an ecosystem is really essential, and bringing transparent data to the market.
I wasn't involved in the implementation of the blockchain in the business, but if you ask me what are the good implementations, I think that using blockchain as a registry, right, for the documents and the patents, and for example, it can be used everywhere, right? It can be used in patents, it can be used, for example, in the lottos when you have to register all the bets or anything. So I think this is the most simple and the most obvious implementation of blockchain after cryptocurrencies itself, and the world is getting advantage from this feature already.
Max, I'm going to play a bit the devil's advocate here. Do you think all industries are prone to the implementation of blockchain?
This is quite a philosophical question, and the answer to this is also quite philosophical. So when we speak about the whole industries, right, of course we understand that industries which have problem with the trust, right, or auditability, or we're afraid that somebody will be able to change the data which is supposed to be registered, the main important ones are the governments, right? Because this is kind of like the authority which we all elect and which is supposed to do the job, right? And right now, in most of the governments, and I'm from Ukraine, right? You can imagine the corruption there is a thing, right? So the main idea is that I believe that businesses and structures who need blockchain, they probably don't really want to implement blockchain because in this sense, they will become open and auditable. And they not always want this. So this is also a big challenge, what I see, if this answers your question.
I'm not sure if it answers the question, but I think it says that blockchain is important. I personally do not see where it wouldn't be important. And just to go on from what you were mentioning, using the token as an incentive to reward contribution, participation, involvement is really very powerful. So if you reach the individual, then the government, whatever big and centralized and corrupt they are, it's impossible to, to spread that corruption. I will say a bit more of this later.
Mm. And I think that there are some industries which are maybe more natural or easier to apply blockchain at first, but I think, as I said before, that blockchain will have an impact everywhere. So for me, it's more a question of having a clear vision how it's going to be implemented. And there is a clear vision in certain industries. It's more difficult to see now what's the path going to be in others. There are some businesses which are not blockchainable because it would make them irrelevant, like some intermediary businesses. And I think those will not be able to go on the next stage of digital transformation and will slowly disappear.
Yeah, I very much agree. I think you can't really say one industry will use blockchain and the other won't. I think it's very use case specific, and we'll see a lot of companies using blockchains in one way, but not in the other, where centralized ledgers just make more sense. But what you were saying, I think, is quite critical. It's very much about are organizations and companies willing to adapt the technology or not? And I think it's something we as consumers can really drive and ask for and influence very much.
In fact, I agree perfectly well with you, Paul, on what you were saying just now. In fact, I think it's very specific to a particular application. If I may use an everyday example, you can put in a nail inside a piece of wood with a set of pliers. But actually the tool to use that is a hammer. Would you have a similar example for an application that would not make sense for blockchain application?
So I think, I mean, blockchain is not the most efficient ledger if you want to store a lot of data. So you can't save everything on the blockchain, and it just doesn't make sense. So I think it's an essential tool if you want to redistribute trust among a system, and that makes very much sense. I think we saw with a lot of crappy ICOs that not everywhere the blockchain is needed, and people are needed to be very creative to find a use case. And it just makes sense for some applications and not for others.
Yeah, for me, in software development, there is this the traditional web stack, which is about to be complemented by several layers of blockchain. So for me, it's about choosing and understanding where in this stack to put blockchain. And the whole applications will not run exclusively on blockchain, but blockchain will, at some points of the stack, have relevance to verify or register information, timestamp it, permission it, but you will still have, at some points, private databases and other traditional parts of the stack.
Ayala?
I'm a total believer in blockchain, so I agree with the points of my colleagues, but I don't have more counter-examples. I have more examples for blockchain.
No, I will also skip this one.
Very good. One last thing. We've been hearing how Malta wants to become the blockchain island. Those of you who were listening to the legal sessions yesterday, I think that we are in the right direction of actually achieving such a status. But I am also a believer that regulation is only one part of it. Actually showing use cases for the technology is as important as having the proper regulation. If you had to pick one particular application that the Maltese Islands could implement, what would that be?
So I'd like to start off with that, if you may, because this is exactly the reason why we're here. And it's really great to see how the Maltese government, the regulator, the MSE, the whole ecosystem is pushing towards transparency. And since we're a provider of transparent financial data, this is really a building block. And I think it's one of the most forward-thinking countries and regulators who actually see the value of bringing this transparency. So obviously, I'm very keen to see our implementation in this regard here.
Go ahead. I'll have the last word, maybe.
When I think of Malta as a blockchain island, I mean, what's the purpose of a blockchain island? It's to get businesses registering themselves here, right? And I think if you ask what should Malta do as a first step in terms of government to attract businesses, I would say the most natural one to be to allow them to create businesses using or on blockchain. We did a similar project in Switzerland, digitizing the Swiss company register, and we could significantly reduce the time to register businesses from 10 days to 1 hour, 37 minutes in the example we created last April. And I think if Malta could provide this type of level of efficiency to businesses registered here, leading to a whole range of other automation of processes, that could be a good start.
So if we implement that in Malta from the current 3 days, we can go to half an hour?
Maybe.
Yeah, so right now, like here, although we speak blockchain island, right? But right now, as it all goes through MFSA, which is a financial authority, right? It is still more like in the sense of cryptocurrency, right? So the main idea is to regulate businesses who work with cryptocurrencies. And these are basically businesses which really generate the money, right? So it's not so much about implementing blockchain, it's more about exchanges or the processing and so on. So the main idea is that Malta regulates these businesses, invites them to the island, and helps them to create a banking ecosystem. If it is done, then we already have a solid ground for the future development.
Mihaela, we have 1 minute left.
As you mentioned, actually, as you remarked, yes, Malta is leading the way when it comes to regulation for blockchain technologies. So I want just to, take you a bit to the future, but I think here it can happen faster than anywhere else, because the regulation, like now in the works, the latest is giving legal personality to non-human entities, and these can be DAOs, distributed autonomous organizations or autonomous cars. So finally, we know what to do when an autonomous car has to make a decision or has an accident. We do the same as we would do to a person. And I think this is phenomenal, and I would bet on this kind of application to lead the way.
Perfectly agreed. Thank you. That's our time up.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Launching an ICO from a cybersecurity perspective. A look into some of the best security practices and security pitfalls to avoid when deciding to launch an ICO. Hartej Soni, Hosho.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much to Iman Poulos and the Malta Blockchain Summit for having me. My name is Hartej Soni. I'm the co-founder and president of Hosho.io. We are a cybersecurity blockchain company based in Las Vegas. We've been sitting on the intersection of blockchain and cybersecurity for about 14 months now. We've grown the team to about 30 people in Las Vegas, and we've been pretty focused on smart contract auditing and penetration testing, and now chain analysis of all the top 7 protocols. And so our perspective on this industry has been relatively unique as we're ripping through smart contracts being written. Most of them have been for ICOs in the last 12 months, mostly on the Ethereum blockchain, ERC20 tokens, where people are trying to take advantage of the financial, this new hype and this new ability to take advantage of the fundraising mechanism that is an ICO, the initial crypto offering. And a lot of people have been asking me at this summit, is it over? Is the bubble over? The truth is I don't think initial crypto offerings as a fundraising mechanism are about to disappear. And I really think that we're about to receive an increasing amount of clarity on regulation on the topic. In 2018 alone, $21.9 billion was raised via an ICO. And that's about 927 ICOs. And I mean, looking at this room alone and this conference, I heard there's 7,500 people. And when I landed in Malta, I kind of was like, what crypto winter? I don't know what crypto winter people are talking about. This is pretty insane turnout, and it seems like people are pretty excited. But at the same time, with $21.9 billion raised in the ICO market, about 10% of all of the money in the entire space has been either lost or stolen. And as a believer in Bitcoin and an old school Bitcoiner, I want this community to survive for an array of reasons. And I think it's extremely important to start talking about cybersecurity, and it's important. I don't think I have a presentation, but I'm going to wing this then. I'm clicking right and nothing is happening. So we're just going to wing it. So yeah, I think it's really important to talk about cybersecurity. And when it comes to cybersecurity, one thing that we're finding is people are not valuing security at their own companies in-house. It's probably the most important thing that I can talk to people about, is that people are rushing to launch an ICO, they're rushing to raise money and to get that money in-house. Most of the time at these types of conferences, when I meet people and I say, hey, so tell me a little bit about your project, they say, my name is Matt, and we raised about $2 million in 40 minutes yesterday. I said, but what about your project? What do you have built? And he's like, I just told you, we raised $2 million already. And that has nothing to do with what you actually do. And in addition to that, even sophisticated companies, when you ask them, who at your company is in charge of security? So when I want to talk about your in-house security practices, who's in charge? And they usually point the finger to the CTO. And that's a massive problem. If anyone in this room is currently pointing their finger, in their mind at least, to their CTO to be in charge of security, something's colossally wrong. And you need somebody in-house to be a CISO, or at the bare minimum, you need to engage with someone for $5,000 to $10,000 a month as a consultant to come in-house and to analyze your in-house security practices. One of the most common ways Bitcoin exchanges get hacked is through the most simple phishing scam. And so I'll give you a story of a Bitcoin exchange that was hacked. About $17 million was stolen within 24 hours, all because of a human flaw. Because in cybersecurity, chances are it's not your firewall that is not that is being penetrated. When someone tries to penetrate a firewall, they're just going to get a response that they couldn't penetrate it. It's usually human weakness. So all of the employees at this Bitcoin exchange began being stalked. And on that matter, I will tell everyone in this space that if you are an active player in this space, if you're an employee at a blockchain-related company, you are a target to hackers. And all of the employees of this Bitcoin exchange began being stalked by this hacker on social media, and they found that one of the employees is obsessed with dog walking competitions. And the hacker made a website for a dog walking competition really close to her home, and basically emailed this employee that, congratulations, your dog has been selected. Click on this PDF and sign up and register, and you're going to win this dog walking competition. And as soon as she clicked open that PDF, the hacker had access to the employee's keyboard strokes and the entire screen, gained access to all of her passwords and usernames, and within 24 hours, $17.5 million was stolen from the Bitcoin exchange. And these are the types of things that I don't see being talked about a lot. What are your in-house security policies? Do you have a CISO? Have you engaged with a company for instant response? Who are you going to call when a couple $1 million gets stolen? Who are you going to call when someone says, I stole the pictures of you and your wife on your phone, and I want 1.5 BTC? Like, what are digital assets worth to you? What are those pictures that are not backed up worth to you? And there's companies like TLDR, for example, that when you lose a couple of $1 million and you call TLDR in the middle of the night and you say, hey, we got hacked. I'm freaking out. I'm getting scary messages on my Telegram. The guy says he knows where I am. Should I be worried about my physical security? That's when people usually wake up and realize that this is not a joke and that my family's physical safety could be at risk. And I've gotten those types of phone calls in the middle of the night. And the sad part is that you can't help them right away, because when someone gets hacked and they call someone like TLDR, what they're sitting on is 5 days of legal paperwork. And meanwhile, they're waiting for someone to come in the trenches with them and help them figure out how to help them. But in reality, they have to sit through legal paperwork and figure out how they can even engage with the TLDR and know who they are. It's time that people take cybersecurity as a priority before they get kicked in the ass. And this is an industry where I'm excited about more people burning their hands on the stove. And the analogy is basically that when a kid burns his hand on the stove, hopefully the kid is smart enough to never burn it again. But in this industry, I hope people burn their hands faster. Because the faster that people burn their hands, hopefully they'll wake up. Yeah, that's about it. I mean, only other things that I can ramble about are the importance of in-house security. If you're writing a smart contract, get it audited by a professional. If you're a Bitcoin exchange, get your website and entire in-house security process is audited. Get a penetration test. Take advantage of chain analysis. I'm excited to see governments take advantage of chain analysis to monitor criminal and non-criminal activity. Coloring coins and coloring tokens is going to be a really important aspect of countries like of Malta, to be able to color a token and to bake the regulation into it to track it live and track the data live at the decentralized application layer. I'd like to commend Malta as being on the forefront of bringing clarity to regulation, because nothing is more important than simply having clarity on regulation and not being scared that you're going to go to jail. So thank you, Malta. Thank you to the organizers of this conference. Thank you for having us. If you have any questions, you can find me at hosho.io. The word hosho means security in Japanese. And if you have any questions, I'm pretty easy to find. I have a turban and a beard, and I'm 6'1". Find me.
Multiple chains versus multiple coins. Ilya Smagin, Waves. Lucas Park, Fleta.
Hi, everybody. I am not John Matonis. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here today, so I got dragged in to be the moderator of this panel. And it was kind of a very last-minute thing, so I'm not so sure exactly what the panel is about, but I've been told it's multi-assets versus multi-chain. And that's an interesting topic. So we have two people here today. We have Lucas from Fleta, and we have Ilya from Waves. Now, Waves is a project that's slightly near and dear to my heart because they started with some code that we wrote with Alex Cherpinoy, and they've done some amazing work since they forked and built a great ecosystem, a great platform. And Fleta is new to me, so it's going to be really exciting to learn what this is all about. So I suppose we'll start with Lucas. Can you tell us a little bit about your platform and what multi-chain means?
Yeah. Hello, I am Lucas Park, the CTO of Fleta. Yeah. Initially, our Fleta is some blockchain service platform that wanted to provide very high scalability and the general purpose the app application. As you know, the one chain has some limited capacity of transaction per second because the TPS is each chain has some capacity of the TPS. So we want to provide the multi-chain for providing very high scalability and some secure the TPS to each the app. So we provide the independent multi-chain, independent chain to each DApp. So each DApp is work independently with the main chain, except the interchain protocol. So we generate some Genesis context to DApp token in our main chain, and they can make own chain, own main chain using our software. Yeah. And so we provide some microkernel that change or chain things and provide the integration of Solidity and provide the JavaScript with the SQL feature that provide the RDBMSs. So multi-chain is very highly required to provide high TPS to HDFs, we think. Yeah, thank you.
And what about Waves? Can you give us a brief 2-minute summary of that?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Ilya Smagin. I am lead developer at Waves. And a few words about the platform. It has been established in 2016. For crypto platform, this is a long term, although it's just 2 years, and from the regular perspective, it's just a very young company. But initially, it was designed for issuing, creating, and circulating tokens, for trading, for speed, and it was focused on tokenization. Now, we move towards more programmable approaches. Recently, we introduced smart contracts to the system and explore use cases there. So I think this is what Waves platform does.
Okay. So we have a chain, and you can either have a native asset and issue lots of tokens on one chain. And so if a user comes in, when they download that chain, they're downloading the history of not only the native asset, but all the assets in the system. Or you have a multi-chain approach where I suppose you subscribe to chains and you only have one state. So I'm trying to drill down, what is the difference from a user experience between a multi-chain versus a multi-asset approach?
Yeah. Okay. In our system, multi-chain means just give independent chain to HDF, so user can use that chain using some fee with their token. In Ethereum or other platform, it requires some fee using that coin, not that token. But because we provide some main chain, they can make some block generation reward, the mining reward. They can give some token economy, or they can make some own account type or transaction type. It's very different. It will make a very different user experience because of some dev wanted to remove the fee, some dev wanted to using some our product coin as a fee, some dev wanted to pay fee using their token. And also each dev, if each dev doesn't some collaboration work, each dev doesn't have any some contact point on it. So so each dev each user just can use their dev what they want. So user never have some confused on it.
Okay. So let's make this somewhat interactive. So we have this guy right here, Professor Aziz. There we go. You're looking. Okay, now he's paying attention. So let's say he wants to create a coin, Aziz coin, and he's trying to decide, do I have it on my own blockchain or do I issue it on a platform like Waves or an ERC20? So if he comes to you, Ilya, and says, I'm thinking about using Waves to launch my token, what's the USP of Waves for that?
Well, we need to understand one thing when we choose the system one over another, which gives us the most advantages for the businesses, for the use cases that we are trying to put on a blockchain. There should be benefits of using the technology, right? And if you want your coins to be exchanged, to be traded, they should, of course, live on one chain. Otherwise, it would be just overload and burden on the information systems to interact with each other. So if you want your tokens to represent value like ICOs, securities, and be liquid, it's best to go with one chain and accept the issues of large, long chain and huge states and things like this. Because in the end, the value that the platform and the technology brings is important, not the drawbacks.
So do you have liquidity? So if he was to issue his token, is there a marketplace where he could trade his token for a Waves token and then sell the Waves token for fiat or Bitcoin or something?
Sure, sure. Of course, in Waves we have everything. You can create token, you can trade it with Waves, you can trade it with other token, you can trade it against fiat and other cryptocurrencies. If this is important to you, of course, you can do it.
Let's say there's a lot of business logic attached with his token. Like, let's say it's a token to incentivize academic research, and you write a scientific paper and you get paid. So there's a lot of oracles and smart contracts and these types of things. Would that be well suited for your platform, or would we have to go somewhere else?
This is exactly why we introduced smart contracts to our platform, to explore more programmable approaches for the tokens, right? Because there should be some sort of border, some sort of edge. If you want your token to be very, very simple, this means very easily exchangeable and tradable and liquid. And if your token represents something else, like it has a lot of logic, it has a lot of restrictions, probably it should be a contract. Now, we are exploring the ways how we can mix these two.
Okay, so now make the case for Fleta. I mean, Aziz is coming to you and says, I want to be on your platform. So what can you offer him?
Pardon? Business sorry, pardon. Yeah. 다시. Yeah. Our Plata, as I said, our Plata is a blockchain service platform and wanted to provide the service-able blockchain platform. And wanted to remove the war between modern development and blockchain development. So we will provide some developer portal that provide some automatically operation, automatically deployment, automatically generation some data or token and DF chains. So And we also provide assistance developer to the apps using Fluttercoin. So this is one of our business model. And second is if someone wants to make some combine the apps, we provide the interchain protocol, like a big database or like some combination of API service. We provide some same interchain protocol to each DApp, so each DApp can get us some data from the other application that following our interchain protocol. So our main chain just probe and just secure that chain, that DApp has the correct chain. So it's just the DApp chain. DApp chain just upload their blockchain header to main chain. So interchain will be operate with a very high reliability. So the uploading is required some data because of is some kinds of transaction. So it will be consumed data also. It also second business model. And third is because of Flutter support some interchain protocol, it can move the token, some DApp token to another chain. Not like some contract or things. Our account has multi-type balance model. So one chain can has multi-token, and it can trade it on that chain using smart contract. It means some smart contract can handle multi-token. So it means it can be service DEX on our chain. So our main chain will provide the DEX on our chain.
Okay, so we have about 2 minutes left, so I have a pressing question that everybody who has to deal with multiple assets or multiple chains, which is the concept of zombie tokens or zombie chains. In other words, tokens or chains that are issued but no longer used. There's well over 1,000 cryptocurrencies floating about, and the natural life cycle is if people stop mining them or stop using them, they tend to go away. But if they're issued on a popular chain like Ethereum or Bitcoin or something like this, they could just stick around forever as dead weight. So in your opinion, we'll start with Ilya, what is the solution to these zombie coins? Do you leave them around forever or do you prune them out somehow?
I think the solution is should be driven by the goals. Do you need to keep the coins around all the time? You use the platform that keeps all the state and it's there forever. But if it just turns out that some platforms are out of steam and don't really have use cases for them, they will be dead anyway. Doesn't matter whether we apply some technical resources or thought processes here. If the platform is useful, it will live. If the platform is not useful, it will die out.
Right, but it's more of a question of competitive advantage. So will platforms that charge rent or prune tokens or sidechains off the system be more competitive than those who keep them forever?
Well, I think there would be a middle ground. It's not necessary to keep everything on chain. I think the blockchain will be used only where it's needed, and the applications that work over blockchain will be part of chain and only part on chain. So I don't think we'll really struggle the problem where the blockchains are too huge for our planet's computer power to process.
Okay. Unfortunately, our time is up. Thank you guys for being an amazing audience. Thank you, Aziz, for playing the game. Thank you, Lucas, and thank you, Ilya.
Thank you.
Centralized versus decentralized exchanges. To quote Vitalik Buterin, should centralized exchanges burn in hell? Ronnie Bosing, Open Ledger. Virgilio Lizardo Jr., Gate.io.
So to answer Vitalik's question, yes, please burn in hell, Ronnie. Thanks. Well, I guess since we don't have a moderator, we just have to kick off by introducing our companies and what we do in the initial stage here. And I would like to start off by introducing OpenLedger. OpenLedger is a fully registered company in Denmark. Just to kick off with what John McAfee said before, we are the one out of those 9 to 10, which is actually existing. Apart from that, it's nice to be in a situation where you come in as initially having a centralized exchange and then early on moving into a decentralized structure and operating on top of a fully established decentralized trading platform like the BitShares ecosystem. That has allowed us to, already from 2015, where I myself and Daniel Larimer decided to actually move in and add a company with its fiat options and gateways to combine that with a decentralized structure where the transparency is really at its essence. And that's actually where we are right now. We are implementing constantly new gateways and combining that with the features of a decentralized structure where you have both a stablecoin collateralized by the core currency of the system, and you combine that with gateways where you allow yourself to actually take cryptocurrencies and move it into a space, a safe haven, where you actually take the bitcoins and trade them into the stablecoin like BitUSD and allow yourself to say, I am fully secured now. There is nobody in the world who's able to connect and actually take my funds.
So Gate.io is a centralized exchange. We were established in 2013. We have around 2.2 million users, average volume about $100 million. We top out at $300 million when the bull is around. And we have offices in China and South Korea. So my main point that I would like to say to start off is that it's not an either-or situation. It's not a binary situation, in my opinion. All of these technologies, decentralized technologies, can be implemented by the centralized exchanges. And while the decentralized exchange technologies are being matured, the centralized exchanges can adapt that technology to their systems as well. So it's not an either-or situation. There's a lot of connectivity that can happen here.
Okay. And yeah, maybe we should go in and present the cons and pros against SEX and DEXs.
So the main advantage that I believe that a decentralized exchange possesses is that it allows people to hold their private keys. It allows people to own their money, monetary sovereignty, which is, I think, what this is all about. So that is the main advantage that a decentralized exchange allows. The other one is anonymity. Anonymity is something that a lot of people care about. I envision that there'll be some exchanges that are fully KYC and other exchanges that allow anybody to be on the exchange in an anonymous fashion. And then the third one, which I think is also important, is no limits. Whether you want to trade a penny or you want to trade $10 million, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Those are the three main advantages that I see for decentralized exchanges.
I think you can add there that the transparency on the decentralized exchanges allows you to actually see who's trading. Yeah. So in another way, and another world maybe in the future, you might actually see the decentralized exchanges taking over, combining it with similar things like the BitShares has. They have the multi-signature accounts. They have the general way of, how do you say? Yeah, you have the multi-signature accounts, and you have the whitelisting and the blacklisting integrated into that system. So you are, in fact, able to present a compliance structure already in demand by, well, authorities worldwide. So that combination, plus the transparency, I think is a move forward. And I guess also the centralized exchanges in general, they are all of them mainly looking for the security aspect, of course, to go in and offer their users that similar magic that the DEX offers, where you can actually hold your funds in full control by yourself. The combination of the SEX and the DEX is most probably the future also, but imagine that you are actually in future able to see all transactions happening in the world. I would think that the total volumes that we see right now would be reduced by 70% or something, purely because of the bots operating worldwide on the centralized exchanges, and you don't even see them. So that's an interesting aspect to consider also.
And another thing to keep in point is that there's different kinds of decentralized exchanges. So Ronnie is talking about a system that's run on DPO as delegated proof of stake. The most used decentralized exchange right now is run on the Ethereum blockchain. So I'm going to refer to that because that's the one that's most used right now. So the main disadvantages of the decentralized exchanges currently right now is, number one, is speed. So when you have multiple nodes that confirm the transactions, that takes longer than in a centralized exchange where there's one node. The user experience is another big issue. So people like simple, easy to use interfaces. Another issue is a cross-chain. So cross-chain means, for example, on the Ethereum decentralized exchange, all of the pairs are connected to Ether. So if you want to have a Bitcoin pairs or EOS pairs or something like that, that's not possible on a decentralized exchange right now. We also have, yep.
It is actually.
Okay. I'm talking about the proof of work decentralized exchange. So yeah, again, Ronnie's doing a good job of DPoS. I just want to touch a little bit on the proof of work one. Uncontrollable fee structures. So because if CryptoKitty get popular again and somebody wants their lavender kitty, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer or pay a higher fee because the blockchain will be congested with all of these other transactions. So your transaction fee would go up for your trade. Limited trading features. So futures, contracts, margin trading, conditional trading, these are not available on decentralized exchanges yet. Fiat. Unfortunately, we still have to use fiat, so that's also very limited on decentralized exchanges. And finally, the immaturity of the technology. There's still, this technology is still very new compared to the centralized exchanges, so it might not be the technology, it might even be human error. So these are the issues that I see currently with decentralized exchanges. But again, the centralized exchanges are advancing their technology for safety of funds and other. Decentralized exchanges technology is advancing rapidly as well. So these are moving in conjunction, and I think there's going to be a lot of connectivity as the time goes on.
I would like to just add some facts finally here. The BitShares decentralized ecosystem is producing something like 2.2 million transactions per day compared to Waves with 49,000, Ether at 600,000, Bitcoin at 600,000. So that one combined with atomic swaps, which are possible on the BitShares ecosystem, where you're actually even entering and leaving BTC equivalent assets, which is of course supported by similar entities like OpenLedger, which allow you actually to enter with the world of crypto into a decentralized trading platform and then enter into a stable coin, like I mentioned, the BitUSD. This is magic, and that's where we are at the moment.
Yep. So there's a competition going on between the different versions, and all of this is moving at a very rapid pace. And I think the centralized exchanges are not just going to be left behind. They're going to adapt a lot of this and integrate it into their systems that they have now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Crossing the crypto chasm. Renowned among circles as the Knights of Blockchain, Marco Streng and Christian Handel offer an insightful discussion on quantitative research in the industry. Marco Streng, Genesis Mining. Christian Handel, DQR.
right. Bonjour, Malta. How are you guys, Blockchain Summit? Thank you for being here. My name is Florian Grummes. I'm the CEO and founder of Midas Touch Consulting. We are investment and trading advisors specialized in the precious metals and, of course, into cryptocurrencies. And for the next 15 minutes, I will have the privilege, once again, to interview Mr. Marco Streng, the CEO and co-founder of Genesis Mining and the Genesis Group, as well as Dr. Christian Hendl, the co-founder and CEO of DQR here in Malta. They both together co-founded DQR, actually. And before I will address my first question to the gentleman, I want to quickly give you an explanation of our topic today, crossing the crypto chasm. The basic concept of crossing the chasm was coined by Geoffrey Moore, a marketing guru in the 90s, and it basically describes a technology adoption life cycle. And according to Moore, the biggest challenge for any new technology is to cross the chasm between the early adopters, the visionaries that moved into the space very early, like those two gentlemen here, and then, of course, the mainstream mass adoption, which is still obviously missing in the blockchain and cryptocurrency space. And we, in this discussion now, we want to find out the perspective or the views that these two gentlemen have of where we are right now and how we can really get over this gap, cross the chasm that we're actually facing as an industry right now. So my first question is for you, Marco. You are the CEO and co-founder of Genesis Mining and the Genesis Group. You guys been very early in the stage. You are one of the largest or the largest mining company in the world. You have more than 2 million customers, actually. And maybe you can share with us quickly how it all started and how the company has evolved over the last couple of years.
It all started by the time around 2013, where actually it was before 2011, actually, but Genesis Mining was founded in the end of 2013, and it started with me having the basically my first mining rig that I did in my student dorm, and it was like, by that time the industry was really exciting, because everyone that was involved was really driven by all the ideas, all the ideals of blockchain. And I remember, like, I mean, there was a lot of how can I say, a lot of wild ideas how it could all evolve. And no one would have thought that it could evolve the way it did, and particularly so fast as it did. So I was amazed by the transparency and by the whole structure. You could see all the cash flows of the industry by looking at the blockchain. So I wanted to know how that all works, and I constructed my first mining rig in my 12 square meter dorm. And by the time it was set up, I couldn't believe myself. This machine was literally printing money. And I directly called my colleagues and partners, and I said, wow, this is revolutionary. We are validating transactions on the blockchain, and the industry works in a way that it's done decentralized all over the world. And we said, we have to bring that to the next level. So let's make thousands of these machines and build the first big data center. So we didn't waste any time, and we made our plans and actually built our first mining facility in the Eastern Europe by that time. And while we did that, we showed that plan. Everyone said, wow, what the hell is that? You're building a data center that is printing money? That is, wow. I mean, this was very new to a lot of people. So they said, please let me participate. Let me do something. that I want to join that. And well, we said actually we wanted to build that data center for ourselves, but okay, I think we can find a solution. So we basically built that facility and we rented it to our friends and partners who wanted to join us. So that's how Genesis Mining evolved from large-scale mining operator, which it is. We're running a lot of our operations ourselves, but we're also offering the possibility for everybody to join, and to participate in mining. And that's what we did, and it's called cloud mining. So everyone can go on the homepage and can basically use our infrastructure in the cloud that we have, and use our large-scale data centers and mine in the cloud and participate. And that's very important because the industry needs to be open, and everybody should be able to participate in mining, and not only the big mining giants that are selfishly mining for themselves.
Wow, great. Thank you, Marco. Christian, what about you? You are the CEO and co-founder of DQR here in Malta. Can you give us a vision, or what is the company actually doing, and what is the vision here?
Sure. I mean, we were one of the first investors in Genesis Mining, and we tried to take their philosophies to the next level. So essentially, we focused on three main areas: education and research, such as the name suggests, digital quantitative research, where we try to raise the awareness of what blockchain technology means, not just for the financial sector, but beyond the financial sector. We have a second pillar, which is with exchange infrastructure, but not actually trying to just sell cryptocurrencies, but financial products. And our final element, and that's the element that brings us together, is our foundation. So every subsidiary of DQR tries to donate a percentage of their profit to a decentralized autonomous organization where we try to build out that infrastructure and take blockchain technology to the next level.
Awesome. And Marco, why did you start DQR together with Christian?
For us, it was a natural fit because, I mean, we came from the very basis of the industry, from the generation of the coins and from the validation of the transactions, and we needed to. We want to make this very basis accessible to everyone, but going one step further is to make it for everyone accessible and basically building the on-ramp to the industry from the traditional world to the new cryptocurrency and blockchain world. And that is naturally done by an exchange. So we said, let's do it, and here we are.
Okay, and Christian, now coming to the topic actually of our discussion, what is so specific about the crypto chasm, if you want to call it like that, and what are the obstacles that you are seeing that our industry basically has to come over on the way to mass adoption?
I mean, the question of mass adoption is a very interesting one, because what does mass adoption really mean? Does it mean that we are just addressing those that are currently in the financial sector, such as education, looking at institutions, regulations, so forth? Or does it mean that we try to actually bring those that are unbanked into the economy? So I would say to go through that crypto chasm, we need to go back to the philosophies of cryptocurrency and blockchain and basically address the base layer scalability, the secondary layer scalability and applications built on that, grow the ecosystem, make it bigger, make it faster, make it stronger. And the first step to that is we need to bank the unbanked. And then from there, provide an economic voice to those individuals that don't actually have a choice to use the financial sector. So I think we're in that direction right now, and on the long-term scale, you can see that the trend is only going up.
Great. Marco, what about Genesis Mining? I mean, how are you guys working on making crypto more accessible? Are there any new products coming up from Genesis? What are the latest news?
So, I mean, for us, being so long in the space, for us it's important that the adoption keeps growing. So I think probably a lot of people know about the, I think Genesis is particularly known also for the mainstream adoption campaigns. I mean, we have sponsored cabs in New York, we have done billboards everywhere over the years, we have sponsored mainstream events all over the place. And this is what we need to do, because we need the space to grow, and we need it to make it accessible for everyone. And we have done that with Genesis Mining, and there's also now a wallet coming up, the Genesis wallet, which makes it for everyone very easy to hold cryptocurrencies and to send it. And yeah, for us it's very exciting, and our technology keeps improving a lot. We have just launched the Genesis Radiant, which is the most efficient mining technology in the market right now. It has been developed over the last years, and we have really optimized every single element in this whole mining process. And it's more complicated than you might think. I mean, it goes really from the chip level to the PCB level of the machines, to the data center layout, and to the monitoring software, and of course to optimizing further electricity prices and everything that really drives our efficiency of our mining operation to a maximum and gives the economic advantages to all of our users.
Okay, good. Maybe a quick statement from both of you about the current state of the market. Really quick, because we're running already out of time.
Well, I think, I mean, we're currently in a bear market, but that's not a bad thing. I mean, it's a natural cycle, and we've been through many of those cycles before. What's most important is that I think all of the entrepreneurs here has to really dig deep inside and look why we got into this space and how we can bridge that. And being positive and focusing on the long-term vision, we can really make a change in this world and leave a legacy behind for future generations.
Great. Yes, and I mean, if you look at the public space, I mean, Bitcoin has died so many times in the press, or cryptocurrencies. And, but I think what is very clear, and it has never been so clear before, is that the blockchain technology is here to stay. And I hope that everyone here, and there's a lot of passionate people, a lot of people that are driven by this innovation, they should be in there for the long term, for the sustainable applications for the space, and not for like short-term gains, ICO, quick money. That's not what really helps. I think there's more than enough potential, and let us all develop sustainable use cases and make this economy a flourishing one.
Great. Christian, you want to add anything on this final comment from Marco?
No, I completely agree. I think Genesis Mining is the backbone of blockchain, essentially, and DQR is trying to create that to an accessible, as accessible as possible. So why don't we get together and united, and let's make a difference in this world. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Marco and Christian. If you want to learn more about Genesis Mining and DQR, please visit them at their booth at 68. And I thank you very much, and have a wonderful rest of the event and a relaxing weekend. Thanks. Bye-bye.